Okay, I just started it. Give me about 10 seconds.
All right, I think we're good to go. Good evening. It is Tuesday, November 10th, and you are watching the regular governing board meeting of the Litchfield Elementary School District. As you can tell, we are in a virtual format this evening and will be for the foreseeable future. So hopefully you are watching us via YouTube right now. So I officially call this meeting to order. And our first item up is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we officially get started, I think all of us are pretty used to the Zoom format by now, but just for all of you that don't know, we are all at our homes respectively. So if you hear our children or our dogs or doorbell rings, you know that's what's happening. This is real life happening on your screen, so please bear with us. If you're following along on our agenda, we will start with 2A, our recognitions and celebrations, and that is with Shelley Hornback.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President Clymer, members of the governing board, Superintendent Gunning. Tonight, we have two very special celebrations, starting with Miss Julie Brownsberger. Miss Brownsberger is a teacher at Verado Elementary School, and we celebrate her tonight for successfully achieving recertification of her national board certification. She is one of just 25 teachers across Arizona who achieved recertification this year. She did not just squeak by either. We were told that she was recertified with flying colors. This is a rigorous process with multiple components, and in true superstar fashion, Miss Brownsberger wants to thank her entire team for their support. She tells us that Principal Janke encouraged her and offered her tremendous support from the very start. And Mr. Emery videotaped her lessons and gave her guidance continually. Laura Combs helped Miss Brownsberger transition to the distance learning format and challenged her to enhance her technology skills so that she could provide her students with more rigorous academic opportunities. We have two other National Board certified teachers in our school district. They are Allison Paterno and Miriam Wilson. So Ms. Brownsberger wants to give special thanks to Ms. Paterno and Ms. Wilson because they offered invaluable coaching throughout this rigorous process. We're so proud of Ms. Brownsberger for her original achievement, now her recertification achievement, especially, of course, while she is continuing to teach in the midst of a global pandemic. All of this is above and beyond her usual educational excellence. So please join me in congratulating Julie Brownsberger of Verado Elementary School on this outstanding achievement. Tonight, we also want to celebrate a community partner and its support of our middle school math students. Our partner is named Soul Power Solutions, that's S-O-L. And Soul Power Solutions is sponsoring 4 middle schools in the Math Madness online math competition. The schools are Belen Soto Elementary School, Verado Heritage Elementary School, Verado Middle School, and Western Sky is the other school. Belen, Verado Heritage, Verado Middle, and Western Sky Middle School. Thanks to our generous sponsorship from Soul Power Solutions, our students can now spend their free time learning teamwork and goal setting as they do math online for fun. This project was inspired by an 8th grade math teacher at Verado Middle School named Tracy Maticus. And Miss Maticus worked with these students to stay connected and engaged all summer long. She also worked with Soul Power Solutions to get their competition entry fees covered. This is their reward for these students who worked hard and have been succeeding. Please join me in congratulating Miss Maticus on her excellence and thanking Soul Power Solutions for their generosity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelley. That sounds amazing. Congratulations to Ms. Brownsberger. I have heard about the process of certification and recertification. I'm assuming is just as difficult, if not more. So congratulations from all of us here at the school board. We think that's amazing and hope you will inspire others to do the same. Moving on to item 2B, which is our COVID-19 update with Superintendent Gunning.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the governing board. We wanted to provide an update for you, just kind of where we are and where we're sitting right now in regards to our COVID update. You can advance the slide. So let's first check in to look at what our metrics were looking like last week. And as we could see from the week prior, we jumped tremendously in the cases per 100,000 to 156, as well as we tipped over that 7% positive, which that was the percent positive that we were looking at before we even opened into hybrid of being under 7%. So those were the metrics that we had watched for the 2 consecutive weeks, which were very concerning. Next slide. The other thing that we added last week was we added some additional information to our dashboard, and we felt that this information was important. Of course, the safety of our students and our staff are top priority, but another piece that COVID has brought to the stage is just the operational struggles that we have encountered during this time. As you can see, the not only active cases, but then you can also see the quarantine cases, and those are combined of students and staff. With our staff, and when you're looking at the quarantine cases, the things that we struggled with was our substitutes and the fill rates and being able to meet the needs of our students in our classrooms. Our fill rate and substitute situation has been a struggle this year, and not just for us in our district, but statewide. And for October, we had a 68% fill rate. Typically, we're sitting in the high 80s, even into the 90s in a typical year when you're looking at a fill rate. So for the month of October, we had 104 positions, unfilled classrooms. And that's where the struggle definitely came to fruition as we were looking at what we needed to do to help support our staff and our students, and knowing that the trend of the COVID illnesses were continuing to increase in Maricopa County. Next slide. Wanted to update you on our on-site learning and support services. This is our free on-site learning. We have 440 students participating in K-8, 121 in preschool. So that's a great clarifying. We had some questions about preschool. This is just on-site learning, free for those families who would like to participate, just like the K-8. We had 333 students receiving special ed services, 102 students receiving developmental preschool services. Next slide. For food services, this is our update. We have our free grab and go meals at 6 of our schools for all children age 18 and above. And our bus stop distributions will be coming soon. So we're hoping to update that information and share that information very soon. So those are the schools that you see that have grab and go meals, as well as there are free meals for every child who is participating in the free on-site learning. Next slide. Technology update. We're hoping to have our internet upgrade by the end of November. We're keeping our fingers crossed on that piece. And we have deployed 2,974 devices for students. 251 devices have been gifted to students from our community partners, and 85 devices, additional devices, have been pledged by our community partners. Next slide. Transportation update. We have 22 buses running special education routes right now, and those buses contain a student transporter and a monitor. We have 2 buses running meal deliveries, and those will contain 2 transporters each to help assist in the distribution of meals, and 12 student transporter positions available. So we definitely are recruiting for our student transporter positions, as well as 3 monitor positions. Next slide. We will continue with our communications, weekly or biweekly emails from superintendent, updated FAQs, updated website, weekly meetings with our admin council just to provide update on COVID and where we are sitting. And then at a school level, you'll see teacher weekly blasts, school messaging, newsletters, and frequent staff meetings at the school sites to help keep their staff updated. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, I know this is a little different than when we're in our in-person format. So I guess I'll just go around on my screen and ask if we have questions, try and keep it a little bit organized. So Kim, I'll start with you. Do you have any questions or comments for Jody in regards to the COVID update?
Yes, I do. Superintendent Gunning, can you elaborate on what happens in the quarantine scenario? I know we've received a lot of feedback from parents who make the argument that students are not spreading COVID and that the classroom is not an issue. But I would like to hear more about what happens when a teacher or staff person has to go into quarantine and how that impacts the logistics of instruction.
So we have 2 separate components. We look at quarantines. Quarantines last for 14 days. So they have to be quarantined into their home for 14 consecutive days. And that is due to an exposure to someone who is positive with COVID. Then we also have isolation, which that is usually a 10-day period and 24 hours of no symptoms. So an isolation period could be somebody who is COVID positive and or is experiencing COVID-like symptoms and needs to isolate. So as you can see, all of those different pieces can put a teacher or staff member out for an extended period of time. Also, if you're looking at quarantine, those can go on top of each other. So you could be out for 14 days, be back for a few days, be exposed to another person who has COVID, and now you're out for another 14 days. And you can't cancel out your quarantine, even though we've asked, I think, Maricopa County Department of Health 15 different ways of being able to cancel that time with a negative test, but that can't happen. The other part that we just, it just becomes really difficult as the community spread has grown as well, because we're just seeing more and more people exposed to that. Fortunately, I would say we haven't seen serious symptoms, so I'm very grateful for that. But the exposure rate is going up, and having the large number of uncovered classes. I know 2 Fridays ago we had over 24 classes uncovered, and that's really difficult because that means we're deploying every person possible to cover classes.
Great, thank you for that additional explanation. I have 2 technology related questions. The first one is, are we currently aware of any students or families that need technology support that don't currently have access to that with the recent switch back to remote learning?
Jody, I can answer that for you.
Okay.
So we took whatever the schools had on their list of families that were in need and deployed enough for them to cover that completely. So any new requests they're getting in are just brand new. So as the week progresses, they should fulfill all of those needs. Some schools have already deployed every computer that was needed. Some are doing that over the course of the week. And then we have some that as people come in, we can put them on a wait list, but this time it's very short. It will be a couple-day turnaround before they'll get computers. So we're in a really nice position finally to have computers to be like, yes, let me take your name, get with technology, I'll call you in a day or 2. It's glorious.
That is fantastic. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you for the update. My second question is, can either Superintendent Gunning or Ms. DeCose, can you just for everyone's, so we're all on the same page, we've received some emails about some glitches that happened yesterday. And I know some of that's just going back to remote learning, but another piece of that is what you spoke about, Superintendent Gunning, the internet upgrade. Can you just tell us some more about the history behind that and kind of what that's supposed to be doing once that actually gets installed?
Sure. So we're currently providing 1 gigabyte of internet service across the district. In the morning, when all of our students are on, we're maxing out and sometimes even reaching over a gigabyte. So our upgrade with Cox is to go up to 10 gigabytes for the entire district. And we're waiting for the switches and things to come in so that those can get installed. We are currently just waiting for 2 more switches. And as soon as those get here, then the guys will get on it. We're hoping, we don't have a delivery date for them, but we're still hoping in the next couple of weeks around Thanksgiving time. Hopefully by the beginning of December, we would be up to 10 gigs, which should completely satisfy all of our bandwidth across the district.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. The last thing that I want to say about COVID actually isn't a question, it's more of a statement, 2 statements. The first is that I went back and analyzed the data specifically for our district since we made our decisions to go to hybrid and when we made the decision to go to 5-day in person and what the latest results are, as well as if you're not aware, the Maricopa County Department of Health Services, that the dashboard is actually from 12 days prior to 2-week period, 12 days prior to the date that it comes out. So if you were to look at the Arizona cases from Johns Hopkins University, we are back at a level that we haven't seen since late July, early August. And so those are some things that we as a board considered when we decided to go back to remote learning, which is basically the unflattening of the curve. So we had, our curve was high, obviously this summer, the curve went down. And when we made those decisions, the curve was maintaining at low rates. And since then we've seen a large increase in those rates. And it's only getting worse if you look at the day-to-day cases that we're seeing today. So if and when that curve will peak and then reflatten, we could at some point, probably into next year, make some decisions related to that. My second statement that I would like to make is that in my opinion and the opinion of some other leaders in the state, the lack of decisiveness and leadership from the top, meaning pretty much all levels of government, including our governor, means that these decisions have been forced down to the lowest level of an elected official, which is us. So I would like to thank Kathy Hoffman, the Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction, for acknowledging this difficult and frustrating decision that we have been forced to make on behalf of the general public health. She had a wonderful press conference yesterday where she made some really great statements about the difficulty of that decision and support for those of us who have been forced now to go back to remote, and for those of us who will be forced in the near future to do the same.
Thanks, Kim. I will go on to Elaine. You are next on my screen, so if you have any comments or questions.
All right, thank you very much. I have a statement and then 2 questions. Kim, I would like to ditto what you just said. We've said it before. The lack of leadership at the top level of our government is forcing us to make these decisions. We continue to get emails on both sides of the fence. Please stay open, please close. For those of you who are still upset with us and the decisions that we have had to make, Superintendent Gunning said it pretty easily. The staffing alone is making it very difficult to provide what your students need, what your children need, what our community needs. And so these decisions have had to be made. Jody, as far as the decisions that we are making to stay closed, we've had a couple of teachers email us asking for a definitive date. I know that we have talked before about following in Agua Fria's calendar. I know that they are stating that they will remain online until 2nd semester. And if then the metrics allow, they will continue or consider reopening. Are we in a position where we are able to put a definitive date on our learning so that our teachers can better prepare, students can then settle in, and parents can then also schedule whatever they need to do to make sure that their families have what they need. And then the second question would be to the on-site learners, 440 at the moment. I'd like to know who are watching those kids, and I want to kind of give a very clear expectation to any families that, and correct me if I'm wrong, what this does is provide a location for students to come. They are still online doing the exact same learning that they would be doing in the comfort of their home. We are providing this, it's here, it's available. I don't know what the guidelines are or if there are any. So for families who are really struggling and yelling at us for making these decisions, saying they have no place for their children to go, it does seem to be quite the opposite. Those two questions.
So on the first question about a definitive answer, what we did communicate in the last letter was that we would review this setting after Thanksgiving. So the week after Thanksgiving, so that puts us all the way into that first week of December, just to see where we're at that time. There are so many different variables, and I think that's the hard part, because it's not just the metrics themselves. It's looking at our cases, looking at the metrics, looking at the staffing. You're going to be discussing some very helpful and making some decisions on some helpful strategies that we'd like to implement for substitute teaching. So I think that's something that I guess I'm just super always hopeful in wanting kids back into the schools. I'm just not sure if, or very positive that it could be before January. I'm not really sure on that. In regards to the free on-site learning, so the schools, we have more children participating than we have in the past. So we have a lot of children. So principals are just making it work however they can make it work. So it could be a reading specialist helping with a group. It could be extended day helping with a group. It could be a classified person helping with a group. So they're just doing their best because they know it's so important for those families that need a place for their child to go. So they're just trying to do everything they can to meet those needs, and making adjustments as needed.
Are there requirements for them to meet in order to take advantage of that?
No, what they're doing is just registering. We do have some students on the wait list right now where we're just trying to manage, what we've been trying to do is manage the internet. Internet is the largest issue currently. So of course we just put it back to our leaders, and they're so creative. So they're figuring that piece out. We have the majority of teachers and classified staff that lead small groups or are special areas. If they can teach from home, they're teaching from home. And that has helped our internet capacity a lot. And that's been very, very helpful.
That's very good. I want to make sure that everybody knows that nobody on this board, nobody in this district wants our children to stay home, wants our students, to stay home. We want our kids in class, right? We all want that. So for, again, those out there who are thinking otherwise, please know that we definitely want all of our students on campus. We want our students learning. There's nothing more that we want than that. But this is the situation that we're in. I would like to suggest that the board make a consideration to put a timeline on something, maybe for after January, the January date, just so parents have an idea of what they need to take care of, something to consider. I know that we don't typically get together for votes on opening and shutting, but maybe something to seriously consider so that everybody knows what they've got ahead of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Melissa, comments, questions?
Yeah, so I have a few. I'll start with piggybacking kind of a little bit on what Elaine said as far as the timeline goes. I'm a little concerned that by us putting that Thanksgiving date of reevaluating, that we've given some people a false sense of hope that we're going to have our kids back in school after Thanksgiving. So I am a little concerned about that date timeline being out there for our families right now. So I was going to say, can we talk about that at some point too, to have a better idea so that our teachers can just know, like, this is what we're doing for the next month or two, or whatever it is, whatever the board or whatever the district decides. It will help them for planning for the rest of this, possibly this semester. And I don't know how we go about that. Obviously, we're not doing that tonight, but just something for us to think about so that we're not, as we get closer to Thanksgiving, the board is going to start getting tons of emails. Hey, it's almost Thanksgiving. Are you going to open? Because we only hear from the people that are mad. We know that. And so those parents are going to email us saying, we want you to open. We don't care. Let's open. And like Kim had mentioned, the numbers, we know what the numbers are right now, even though the benchmarks don't show it yet. So what they're going to show us this week and the next week and what those are going to look like are not going to be pretty numbers that we were seeing when we first decided to open. So that's just kind of my thoughts out there for that. But some of the questions I had, just so preschool, did we stop doing preschool services right now?
So preschool, developmental preschool has continued on, just like all of our self-contained programs. And then for typical preschool, we offer the same opportunity for free on-site learning like we did for every other child, K-8.
Okay, so we're not doing our regular, like they pay for preschool thing, but they can come to free on-site learning. So what are those students doing? Because like our students, like the K-8 kids that do free on-site learning, do their online learning with their teachers at our school. What is it that we are doing with the preschool kids? If they're not doing online learning with their teacher, what do they do?
Megan, do you want to chime in? I think you probably
I
have
was
more.
in a preschool class today. They're with their teacher and their assistants, and they're in that class. I was at Mabel Paget today watching them, and they have all their mitigating measures in place. You know, they were ready to go. And so the parents that wanted their children to continue with that were given that opportunity.
So if we're able to do that, I guess I don't understand why we couldn't still keep offering preschool and having, if they want to pay for preschool.
The one thing that we were cautioned was that because of the executive order that we were that we had to provide free on-site services, we were cautioned by our attorney at the time we asked at the beginning that we could not charge for anything during the school day. However, we could charge for extended day because that's outside of the on-site learning hours.
Okay. So my next questions are about the grab and go lunches. Is there, before when we did this, we had 10 to 11 across the district. That was the time when everybody got lunch, and that's when you went to pick up lunch. Do we have consistent times across the district like that for lunch, or are we doing it differently?
I can answer that one. We are doing it differently, and it's a larger window for people that want to grab and go outside of the school. So if you're not in on-site learning and you want grab and go, we have 6 sites that offer it from 10 to 12. Because once we went back into the hybrid schedule, then the schools went into their regular day school schedules. So it was either give them a larger window of time to have some flexibility for lunch, or everybody revert back to distance learning and go back to that schedule with 10 to 11. And we know that we had some people that weren't happy with 10 to 11 because it was too early. So we were hoping that that choice would make it easier. This week, with the help of transportation, we have 6 kitchens open, and then where we have low numbers of students, we have food being delivered to them. So the on-site timing of the meals is kind of a work in progress, but the grab and go, if you're not on site, is now from 10 to 12 at 6 different sites that were listed on in Superintendent Gunning's PowerPoint.
Okay. So that, I think that pretty much answers my questions there. Yeah, that's all the questions I have for now.
I do want to jump in real quick and say that we have gotten a few emails of parents that have said thank you. So to those of you who are listening, we got those emails as well.
Thank you. Tanya, did you have anything extra to add to that conversation?
Just briefly, sorry that I'm in the dark cave. It's really not that dark in here. I don't know why I'm so dark on the screen. The nice thing about going last is that everybody has such great things to say. You kind of covered up most of the bases. I just had 2 basic things. One, I just wanted to make it super clear, and at least my understanding was part of the reason for our timing on the closure, as opposed to waiting until all those metrics changed dramatically, was a lot of it is a staffing issue, not by anyone's fault, just by nature of the fact that our mitigation measures are strong and in place and working. But unfortunately, the double-edged sword of those mitigation measures are the fact that we don't have the staff. If somebody's out for 14 days, that's a person that's out for 14 days. And it's not like there's a plethora of subs hanging around wanting to jump in and do sub work. So just sort of wanted to sort of make that clear, because at least to my understanding, that was a big part of the timing and trying to give that, consistency, because with the numbers the way they are, who knows what's going to happen, but the odds of there being a governor's order or whatever that's a little bit stronger than what we currently have is fairly high. The second point I wanted to make is, unfortunately, a lot of this is playing out exactly how I thought it was going to play out. I knew we were going to have the spike. We kind of lost our window, I think, for especially our middle school kids to actually go back 5-day. And as numbers rise, obviously that's going to be a lot more difficult. So I think one of the things I just want to sort of plant the seed, and I know it's not that this thought hasn't already been out there, but I don't know that we've really talked about it. I think the reality of, if we function the way we're currently functioning, whether it be mitigation measures or the metrics, the way we're addressing them and following them, the odds of us not going back to school this year are extremely high. This is not going away in a month. It's not going away in 2 months. That's not going to happen. So I think we have to look at the reality of, we either decide to kind of progress as we have been and frankly just not go back to school this year, or maybe for a month at the end of the year, or whatever, or readdressing the way we handle the metrics. And again, metrics change. Who knows if they stay the same. I think this is just a reality. We have to talk about the elephant in the room. And I think the elephant in the room is no real school this year. And that's, I think we have to address it. So, and I think that unfortunately, very well could be a reality. That's it. Sorry, sour note.
Thanks, Tanya. You are right. I will have just a few comments. As you said, going last, I have the benefit of hearing everybody else's words and questions. So many of mine have already been done. So I will try and keep this short. I think people in our audience, whether you be community members, parents, caregivers, staff, members of our community, I think that you can hear the frustration and the sadness and the emotion in all of our voices on this topic. It's not an easy decision. As Elaine mentioned, none of us want this. We do it because we think this is our best chance of keeping our community and our children and our staff safe. And we take that as our responsibility as leaders of this district. So Tanya, I think that you are spot on in the sense that there's some harsh realities in front of us that if we continue, if our community and our county and everything else continues the way that we have been, we're going to be in the same situation, whether it's be with the metrics or what have you, because we're reading, the data in the same way. There's no decisions going to be made tonight, but I do agree that in terms of, allowing parents and families and caregivers, the information to say, it is a very real possibility that we will not be back in in-person school until January. It's not saying it won't happen. And to Superintendent Gunning's messages earlier about, coming back together and checking after Thanksgiving and taking December as it comes, I think is optimistic, and that's where we all want to be. So, I think we are hopeful, but in reality, to Elaine and Melissa's comments about really being able to have parents prepare themselves, I think we need to be realistic in what that outcome might look like. As I said, these are, I'm sorry.
Do you mind, Danielle, just if I jump in briefly?
Sure, go ahead.
And again, this is just sort of, I 100% agree with the trying to be as consistent and give people as much forewarning as possible and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, I think that if we do have a window of in-person learning, I think we have to be prepared to jump on it and just go and not phase it and not slow it. Take what we can when we can take it, because I mean, I can tell you, I think, my child learned more in the couple weeks that she was actually in school than she did in, several weeks prior. It's, so for me as a parent, I'm sort of a take what I can get when I can get it. Again, we don't want to be phasing in and out a million times, and that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that if we do see an opportunity, I think we need to just jump and go and make our transitions maybe a little bit quicker so that we can take advantage of what we can. Because the reality is it's not going to be, unfortunately, as easy as we would like it to be.
Thank you for that. Just a quick sort of a shout out. Gina, you were talking about technology and how much further ahead we are now that we actually have our devices and everything that's come in. Thankful for all of our shipping partners that finally brought those computers and that technology to us. I also want to mention that if I did the math correctly, that's over 300 sponsored devices by our community during this time period, whether they've already been given out or they've been dedicated or sponsored for the future. That's amazing. That's something to be celebrated. 300 different, whether it was individuals or community groups or community businesses or organizations came together and wanted to help make this transition easier for our students. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I know there's a lot of people that you see on this panel right now that have lost sleep at night trying to figure out how we're going to connect kids to their teachers virtually and provide internet and provide laptops and provide all of those things. And that goes for our technology department and many other people in the district. So thank you to all of those community partners for stepping up and doing that. It really means a lot to all of us here. One more thank you, and then I have a couple of quick questions. I think that we are extremely proud of our staff, both our teachers and class ed staff, as well as our district leadership. And so I know us as a board are consistently saying how proud we are of you guys pulling us through this and leading our board with integrity. And that's challenging in times like this, right? Because sometimes we just don't know what the right decision is. One other thank you that I think maybe we haven't said enough, or I know I personally haven't, is just a big thank you to our parents and caregivers, aunts and uncles and grandparents and neighbors, everybody out there. I mean, your cooperation and support is everything. Your students would not be getting their best education without your commitment. Unfortunately, in this year with separated virtual learning and distance learning, our teachers can only do so much because we're not in the classroom together. And without your commitment of sitting next to them and helping them through the technology issues or answering the questions or helping them get logged on to office hours or whatever it might be, we know that this year would not be as successful if not for you. So heartfelt thank you for all of you that are working from home or taking your kids to work with you or swapping off with a babysitter or a grandparent to try and maximize your time at work and at home. I know a few of us on this panel here are doing the same with our little ones at home, and we have a really very good understanding of the sacrifices that you're making, and we appreciate that. One quick question and just a clarification for Superintendent Gunning. I think it was either you, Megan, it might have been you also, just to confirm, the special education class, our self-contained, are continuing as part of our on-site learning. That wasn't broken out. I just wanted to make sure. So those families have continued service for those kids that need the specialized services.
Yes, so I think it was 333 of our K through 8 children with special needs are being serviced currently with their teacher in their classrooms.
Okay, perfect. And I understand that transportation and everything is still a part of their day, so we're able to provide those services, which is amazing. I know those families really rely on that.
Yes, we are providing everything in their IEP and in their individualized education plan, which is speech, OT, PT, all their academic, social skills, and transportation.
Fantastic, thank you. Last question. I think that, Jody, maybe it was you that mentioned as we kind of sort out the onsite, the free, safe place to learn, I guess we're calling it. We have varying people that are monitoring the kids and helping them with their work and things like that. One of the things that you mentioned was our extended day services. Are those also being offered for aftercare, or they're just helping during the day, or do parents still have the option of signing up or paying for those aftercare services after 2 or 3 o'clock when school would typically end?
So when we jumped in this week, we weren't sure exactly what we were going to be able to offer, but as we're seeing like who's kind of taking advantage from a preschool perspective, Dr. Stair is looking at what he can open up even further to other children, especially like our first responders and our frontline workers as well. So we're hoping to grow that. But yes, they're helping. They have staggered schedules so they can help from the morning time all the way into the evening.
Okay, perfect. So sounds like just stay tuned to the community ed department for continual updates as to what is open and if it's on your campus or whatever. I'm sure as we get further into this distance learning, those childcare opportunities will be important for some of our families. So thank you very much. That was all that I had for the COVID section. So
may I say one more thing on what
yes,
Tanya
sure, Elaine.
Very, very brief. Quick analogy. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best, right? So we talk about flexibility. We've talked about it over and over again. To Tanya's point, having a set date for our teachers and our students and our parents and our caregivers and our community to have a definitive time for return is great. That's preparing for the worst. Hoping for the best is if we do have that open window that we can jump into it, but I don't think that it should deter anybody from thinking that we don't want that definitive time so that people can make those accommodations. Because let's face it, most people, if that window was there even for 2 or 3 days, they're going to want to jump on it. That's not to say that we have to do that, that will happen, that's for sure to happen. We don't know any of that, but yeah, just another analogy.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you, Elaine. Okay, if no one else has any discussion on that item specifically, let's move on to item 3A, which is our community opportunity for comment. In this new, I'll just quickly go over this, in our new virtual format, or old virtual format, we've been in both recently. We still want to keep the floor, so to speak, open for our community comments. So what we are going to do is, if you didn't participate this time but would like to in the future, you can email our district and provide a written statement and it will be read. So I believe Mrs. Hornback is going to read those for us tonight. So if in the future you'd like to do that, please send that to the district and we can read it here and then respond accordingly. So Mrs. Hornback, I'll leave it over to you.
Thank you, President Clymer. Tonight we have 2 public comments that I will read. The first is from a music teacher at Belen Soto Elementary School. The author is Crystal Borges, and her message reads, "To our school board and Superintendent Gunning, I'd like to celebrate and thank you for putting student, staff, teacher, and community safety first by listening to science and health department recommendations. I know that full online learning is not what we want, but it is certainly a weight off my shoulders and others like me that we're struggling with whether or not to stay teaching in the classroom with the rising numbers or having to go on FMLA. My own health concerns might not have been quite as severe as the teachers that must be in online learning for the entire year, but enough that it plays in the back of my mind with thoughts of, quote, how bad could COVID be for me if I caught it yet, end quote. As a specials teacher only certified for my area of music, going to do DLA only would not be an option for me as it would be for the other teachers. So again, thank you all for putting everyone's safety first." Next, we have a lengthy message from an author, so I'll read very quickly and hope that we can get that in our allotted 3 minutes. The author writes this: "Hello, my name is Khalees Brown. I have 3 children at Belen Soto. I am writing so that my comments can be read during the public portion of the meeting tonight. I want to express my disappointment in the decision to switch back to all distance learning. Online, a screen is not where our children learn best, nor is our school system set up for this format. I am sorry to hear that teachers are scared to return to school. My husband also had similar misgivings when he was called back to work in May. However, his employer followed the CDC guidelines with plexiglass where necessary, masks, social distancing, sanitizing stations, and souped up cleaning procedures at the end of each day, followed up with contact tracing and quarantining when necessary. My husband is in the business of manufacturing luxury appliances, and his plant has been open since May. I was at Starbucks on Saturday. I also noticed that they too had plexiglass, masks, social distancing, and sanitizing stations. They are also following the recommended CDC guidelines. Fry's, Panda Express, Jack in the Box, Little Caesars Pizza, Attractive Nail and Spa, EOS Fitness, Electric Art Studio, which is a tattoo parlor, and hundreds of other businesses and medical facilities are open and working at full capacity within our district boundaries. They fall within the same metrics that we do. Again, they are all in our district boundaries, yet they are not closed. Is it okay for them to remain open at this time per CDC guidelines and our schools are shut down? The schools are going above and beyond what the CDC has recommended, and yet that is not enough. You say that our teachers are scared to go back. So are our teachers also scared to go to Starbucks, Fry's, Costco? How about travel plans for the holiday season? They're staying home, right? They have no plans of getting on any airplanes, right? Nor do they plan to gather with family for Thanksgiving dinner, correct? Because if they are currently doing these things or planning to gather for the holidays, then they are not truly afraid of getting sick, but are driven by some other reason that is not being stated. If it is safe enough to go to the gym with a mask, fly on a plane with a mask, go to the grocery store with a mask, go to a restaurant barely wearing a mask and observing social distancing, it should be safe to go to school with a mask. I'm sorry that teachers are scared. My husband and I were scared in May when he had to return to the plant where he works with over 200 employees. However, if my husband had expressed to his employer that he was too scared to return to work, even after all of the guidelines had been met, he would have been invited to look elsewhere for another position. I do not understand the logic behind the decision when, within our district boundaries, all other businesses are in full function with the CDC guidelines in place. I feel schools are more essential than gyms, tattoo parlors, nail salons, and Starbucks, yet schools are closed. I must be missing something, and I would truly appreciate if this were explained tonight in this meeting. Thank you, President Clymer. That ends our public comment.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Both of those comments were about things that were on our agenda. So if anyone would like to respond to that, you can. If not, we will move on. Okay. I will say one thing in that I hope the person that you read from the second message, I hope that our explanation earlier, unfortunately, the order was a little reversed in tonight's because our information presentation came first. But I am hopeful that you received the information that you were requesting in terms of why we made that decision. I think we were pretty thorough in talking about some of the operational issues and safety factors. So I hope that you did get the information that you were looking for. Moving on to item 4A, which is the reports from our administrators. And I believe our host, I'm sorry, this evening is Marlene Capistro.
Hi, good evening.
Oh, hi, there you are.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Gunning. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I am Marlene Capristo. I'm the administrator that's overseeing the Digital Learning Academy. In October, we sent out a parent satisfaction survey to all of our DLA families in an effort to get feedback to determine the success of our online learning model. And in the survey, families were asked 5 questions on a ranking scale, and they also had opportunity to provide specific feedback in a narrative form. And tonight I'm here to present the results of that survey. I have a spoiler alert, the results are very positive. Next slide, please. So the survey was, oh, if we could go back one, please. Yep, perfect. This survey was open for 6 days, and 41% of our families responded. On this slide, you'll see the percent of total responses by school. Even though it doesn't list all of the schools on this particular slide, I can get you a percentage of each school to send that to you. On this slide, these are the grade levels that are represented in this survey. Of those that responded at the time of the survey, approximately 35% were middle school and 65% were families that had elementary students in DLA. Nearly 90% of the respondents are satisfied or very satisfied with the amount of time their child is required to be online daily. The time varies depending on the grade level and the nature of the daily lesson. Online time for K-5 is at least 3 hours a day of live instruction, which does not include the amount of time that is allotted for asynchronous work, but does include small groups that meet daily depending on need. And then the online time for 6-8 is a little over 5 hours a day, or excuse me, 4 hours a day of live instruction. More than 86% were satisfied or very satisfied with the level of difficulty of the work required by their child. On this slide, you can see that more than 90% are satisfied or very satisfied with the accessibility of the online platforms that we have for daily instruction. Those would include things such as Nearpod, Zoom, Google Meets, Google Classroom and G Suite, No Red Ink, Wonders, Eureka Math, MobiMax, along with some engaging student response options like Padlet or Flipgrid. More than 88% are satisfied or very satisfied with the amount of synchronous time that students have each day. That would include whole group, small group, one-on-one, and also office hours that are provided by their teacher. And then go back one more, I'm sorry. The final question is just a general question that more than 84% agreed or strongly agreed that LESD Digital Learning Academy provides their child with a high quality education. So this is the data shown a little bit differently. As you can see, overall, all 5 indicators show averages of 3.3 and above out of 4. The following slides show the averages on each indicator for each school, and it's separated by elementary school and then 6-8. On slides 14 through 27, where we're starting now, these are direct quotes from families who provided open-ended feedback about their experiences with LESD's Digital Learning Academy. And as you read through the responses, you can see that families feel very positive about aspects of the program, and other families voice concerns. The comments are broken down into categories. We have communication, classwork and homework, online instruction, synchronous and asynchronous learning, 21st century skills, and then some general overall comments. So we can pause at about 20 seconds for each slide if you'd like. But if you'd like me to go back so you can read it longer, just let me know. And you also have access to this presentation in your DLA board report if you'd like to review it further later on. So we'll start with the category of communication. And I'll go ahead and let you guys just read to yourselves. If we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And I am happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
I don't have any specific questions, just to thank you for sending this out. I think, right now in this virtual world, surveys are really our best tool to gauge what's going on in the mind of our parents and things like that. And just one sort of comment from reading through those, and these are also in board docs, so anyone who didn't get a chance to read it, like you said, can go back and dig in a little further. I think this is a very good illustration of the challenges administrators like yourself and teachers and other people have with making holistic decisions in an environment like this, right? You could see very clearly some people, I want to compress it down to 3 hours a day. No, I want more time. My kid loves it. I want to be online 2 days a week. No, I want to be online 7 days a week. You see the varying levels of people's needs for their own individual families, and our in-person families are no different. So I think it was a good illustration of trying to do our best with the resources that we have and do what we can to meet the needs of all families when that's not always an easy thing to do. So thank you for that presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that?
Not for me. Thank you, Marlene.
Okay, then we'll open up the floor. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kim. Did you have
I think
something?
you have some questions on the presentation. Yeah. Ms. Capristo, I have a couple of questions. My first question is, does the presentation contain all of the open-ended feedback that parents provided?
It does not. So the feedback that was provided, we had hundreds of comments. So what we did is we pulled just those comments that were reflective of the majority of those that were submitted. I am happy to share with you all of the comments so you can read through each of them. You'll see a lot of repetition, very similar to what you see here. But I'm happy to share all of those with you, yes.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be great in my spare time, to read through those hundreds of comments. But but I like to get a comprehensive picture. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In addition to that, can you just tell me a little bit more about how we're achieving and ensuring consistency and equity across the different campuses in the DLA program?
In terms of equity of instruction, well, a lot of that is already created by the fact that we use Eureka Math and that we use Wonders. So we've got that curriculum piece that's already available, along with the other. Teachers have autonomy in selecting what's really best for their classroom in terms of what they use as their platforms, or the what types of technology that they bring in or to use in to engage the students. Outside of that, even though we're in a digital model, our teachers really still know their kids. They spend time each day on the social emotional piece. And so they're able to break off into small groups as needed. It might not be every child every day, depending on the need. They set up one-on-one conferences. They have actually a little more flexibility in terms of when they can meet with students, because they can provide autonomous work and allow the students to go offline. They can take that time and really dig in to small groups, or again, one-on-one. So I think they actually have an advantage to being able to meet the needs of students.
Okay. I think that the feedback received as far as the scores go in the survey are fantastic. I'm not sure what the expectation was, but obviously we're all new to this process. Do you have any feedback or information as to where the other 59% of our participants were when it came to actually giving us that feedback on this new program, as far as the ones that did not fill out the survey?
I don't. We have very involved families and students, but we're also seeing that some families and students aren't participating online all day long. And so it may speak to some of the things that might be going on in their family or the circumstances at home. in terms of why they weren't able to. And honestly, the 40, any return over 40% is a high percentage return. I worked with Brian Owen, our district assessment director, with data, and he's, especially given the short window that we sent it out, that the 40% is actually a high percentage of return.
Okay, so my concern, and part of the reason I'm asking that question,
yes,
is related to the answer. And the answer to the question was, we think people didn't respond who aren't as engaged. And so it makes sense to me that the engaged families would be satisfied with this program. I just want to make sure that no one is slipping through the cracks here, and that we're actually getting feedback from, and I understand that you can only control who is responding to this, who is actually responding. So I'm not sure what we can do. I don't have a solution to gaining that feedback, but it seems as though there could be some sort of gap there in the participation and engagement. Again, I don't have a solution. That's just a statement, I guess, a concern that I have overall. I did enjoy reading your board report that's included as well, and you included information on the DLA in there, and I especially liked seeing that you are planning to incorporate this feedback in the further development of the DLA program for next year. So I appreciate taking this feedback and actually utilizing it and making it purposeful. And I hope that we continue. And I don't know, do you have plans for other surveys or gaining more feedback, as the year progresses, or do you have any updates on that?
Yes, actually we do. A teacher satisfaction survey went out today and closes on Monday. So we'll be taking that data and that feedback and hearing from that, and also sending out a student one as well. We are interested in finding out about how they're feeling about the synchronous and asynchronous time, as well as how connected they feel as a family. So those are the types of questions that they will be asking them, geared probably a little differently, or worded maybe perhaps differently for K-5 and 6-8. And maybe having the families help support with the younger students to get feedback. But we do want to hear from the students that are, whether or not they choose to continue in the model, we would still like to get a feel for what they're seeing and what they're experiencing.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And I look forward to hearing how those survey results come in as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? If you don't have any other questions on this presentation, I'll also open the floor for anyone that has any questions on any of the other administrator reports or comments.
I just kind of wanted to piggyback onto the parent survey data. I also noticed that, throughout all the board reports for all the schools, there were several of the schools that were, showing pictures and addressing a lot of the parent data. Obviously, things are evolving and changing this year, but I think that's really important that, that's part of the planning process that we use at this district, not just at the high, at the admin level, but also at the school levels as well. So I just noticed that throughout, several places. So that kind of goes with this particular conversation.
Anyone else? Comments or questions from any of the other reports?
I do have one just overall general statement that really, it just expounds on what you said earlier, President Clymer, which is I would like to congratulate the DLA and Mr. Keel on the grant that was awarded, $25,000 from Best Buy. That was awesome to see, as well as to congratulate Principal Tassin on the receipt of 86 computers from the Mix 96-9 and Title I Tech program. And I want to express my continued personal gratitude to not only our tech department in the district, as well as Ms. DeCoste for their hard work in getting these devices ready to go and having them on the ready. I'm very encouraged to hear where we stand at this point, which is to be in a fantastic place to be able to get that technology out into the hands of our students. And I am grateful for the continued community support, including the Rastosi family, the Estrella Rotary, and all of the individuals who have and continue to donate devices to this cause to help. It's been just amazing, the outpouring, and very much appreciated.
Yes, it has been a community effort, and seeing all of those people come together has been a silver lining on an otherwise very rainy cloud lately. So Elaine, did you have some comments?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to the Mabel Pageant art teacher for being nominated for the Rise Award. I'm not so sure how to pronounce the last name.
Miss Sarah is what she goes by. So just Miss Sarah it is. Yep.
From one elementary art teacher to another, congratulations. I know you are loved. You are a rock star on campus.
So I didn't have questions, but I just overall going through all these reports, I think the big thing that you see is how our staff just stays resilient no matter what gets thrown at them, no matter what changes we have to make. We continue to just move forward and do the best we can for our kids and put 150% effort into everything that we're doing. And so I just think we need to definitely say how much we appreciate the staff and their constant pivoting and changing direction. We have asked a lot of you, and we're not done asking of you, I'm sorry, but we appreciate the fact that you just keep persevering and moving forward and doing what's best for our kids all the time. So I just, as a parent of kids in the district, as a board member, as a community member, I just want to thank our staff, everyone, our teachers, our aides, our admin, everyone, for constantly just shifting and going with it and making it work for our kids no matter what.
Absolutely. And for putting on a brave face to everyone. I know, we've seen the last couple of days here, and then previously when we've been in, whether it's a hybrid or a virtual format, you see teachers' faces on the screen, and, you see just their dedication, and, they're just not going to let anything get them down. So I would assume that all of our administrators and other staff on the campus that we can't see your face every day are doing the same, because we know you're burning the midnight oil. We know you're working on Saturdays. We know that you're pulling double and triple shifts. We hear about some of it, and I think we know the rest of it is happening, even though we don't necessarily hear about it. So a heartfelt thank you for the work that you do putting into these reports, and all the work that you do in creating the campus and community life that goes into all of these reports. I think that's the bigger haul. So thank you. We appreciate it. Okay, if that is all in that section, we'll just go right on to continuing the reports. If you're following along on the agenda, this is 5A, our reports from Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, I just have a very, very quick, brief report. One is a shout out to our Director of Transportation, Tommy Sims, of course, always going above and beyond for our community as a whole. He actually was a part of a Hey Bus Driver podcast with transportation administrators from across the valley, our trust, which is our insurance company, as well as RWC, which is an international company. So he's getting famous out there. You might want to grab his autograph before he becomes too famous. The other thing I wanted to share is that October 21st, I was a part of the Data Center Community Advisory Board for Microsoft, and we awarded over $100,000 on that day to grants to our Southwest Valley community, to different services that help support all different people, from organizations from education to organizations that help support families with food and supplies and needs, as well as those who support the development of diversity and the growth and diversity in the Southwest Valley. So that's all I have. Well,
that's a great report. After earlier reports, having something nice and kind of the shout outs and the celebrations is something I'd like to continue. So that'll push us into our governing board reports. Kim, I'll let you start. I'm just going to go across my screen. So we'll Kim and then Elaine, you'll be next.
All right, thank you, President Clymer. For my board report, the primary project that I've been working on is equity. And as part of that, I attended the study session that we had on grading practices and also on equity. I have attended numerous webinars from ASBA, including yesterday and today. President Clymer and myself both attended 6 hours of training leading for equity, and the primary things that were discussed were equity versus equality and how to start and continue with equity work within your district. Through this, I have been a member of the Diversity Empowerment Committee since that started, which started over the summer. And we've been learning, discussing, and listening to all members of the committee to determine pathways to increase equity and representation in our district. The result of this committee work is going to be a statement on equity, which is going to be an evolving document that will change over time, but initially will include specific goals and action steps addressing the opportunity gaps in student achievement, discipline, curriculum, professional development, and diversity of staff, teacher, and district leadership. I look forward to discussing this equity statement in more detail. We had an initial draft at our last study session, and we are in the process of gaining feedback on that at the current time, and we'll discuss that again on a study session scheduled for December 1st, and I hope to be able to present that for board action at the board meeting on December 8th. Finally, my second and last point for the night is I am so proud to be an American tonight. And this entire week. I am so proud of the record number of voters who turned out and exercised their constitutional right to vote. And that just makes me super happy on the inside and the outside. And I would like to offer my congratulations to President Clymer and governing board member Melissa Zeidema, as well as our new governing board member, Jeremy Honak, on their election to this governing board. And I am not going to say goodbye to Dr. Fitzer yet, so that will be saved for the next meeting. But I'm excited and eager to continue this important work with all of the newly elected and continuing board members in our district.
Thank you, Kim, very much. Elaine, your report?
Yes, congratulations as well on the coattails of Kim, as I often tend to be. I actually did a few things this month. I know it seems a little crazy. I hung out with Melissa. We worked on some board goals, so that was fun. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Had some conversations with Jody. That's always fun. I voted. Yes, absolutely. Proud to have done that. And the one other thing that I did, Shelley had approached me for an ASBA leadership interview. She reached out to me and asked me if I would be open to answering the question of what is leadership to me. Apparently ASBA is putting together a modge-podge collage of different people around the state. And as I sat and thought about what leadership meant to me, I was quickly reminded as I sent an email that at the bottom of my email, I have had a quote for the past 2 months that I had seen from another email. And it's a quote from John Quincy Adams, and it reads such: "If your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, then you are a leader." And I think that sort of follows on what Melissa had said, and it really comes down to inspiration. And what our staff and our community has done is really inspire me in this job for certain, because we have a lot of really great leaders throughout our district. So congratulations to everyone.
Melissa, you're up next. Then Tanya will go after.
Okay, so for this month, I feel like, again, very busy month. We had our study session where I thought that was very informative on our stuff for the grading, as well as the stuff that's going on with the equity committee. I'm excited for the work that's going to come from that and how we're going to see that unfold in our district as we move forward. I worked with Elaine. We worked on stuff for our goal. Excited to see how that pans out. I think we've come up with some good stuff to add and kind of realized some things that were good that was already there, but we can make sure we keep our eyes on that and not forget about it. I also attended, I was the delegate for our district to attend the voting for our platform going forward, what our priorities are. And that was like 7 hours of fun times. Not really. It was good because it was good discussion, but it was very interesting to hear some of the things that people had to say. It was eye-opening in that you can tell when people are talking sometimes. The governing board sometimes is a stepping stone for people to get into other political aspirations. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but it's nice to see the people who are there truly for the better of kids and to make sure that kids are getting what they need and our communities are having what they need, since schools are such a pivotal part of a community. It's just, we are so vital to what happens in our community. And so it's nice to be around people that feel that that's important. And it's interesting to see some people who have different ideas of what schools should do. And it's surprising sometimes because we are public school board members. So I feel like our job is to advocate for public school policy. But I did do that, and that was good. I appreciate being able to represent our district for that. I also attended the Maricopa County meeting with ASBA, and that was nice because we got to break into groups. I think my favorite part of the night was when we got to break into groups to discuss like what are the trials and tribulations we're dealing with as board members. And I liked that because I got to hear that just hear from other board members. They're dealing with the same problems we are. They're hearing the same things that we are from parents. They've got that very big divide between open, 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 don't open. It was pretty much all about COVID. And it was also alarming to hear how negative and vile actually some people can be about it. We had someone in our group that talked about how they had people threatening them. They had people showing up at their house and leaving, that they left a package at their door. They were afraid to open it for days because they didn't know who it was from, and it had their name and also the school district name on it. And I was so sad to hear that people in the communities that these people are living in were feeling that fear, like because they didn't know how people were going to respond, because people are so passionate one way or the other about this topic. So it just made me really sad to hear that we are making people feel that way, because none of us want to be in this situation. I didn't bring this up during the COVID thing because I had it written down for this, but since we decided to close, I've had people personally reach out to me that don't know me through my social media, just reach out through social media messenger and say, you wanted this, you must be happy schools are closed now. And I just want people to know I never wanted this. None of us want our kids to be all online, doing school online. It is definitely not what I want now. Am I happy with our district for making good decisions for our community? 100%. I'm proud of us for being able to make that hard decision, even though it's so hard. Because a lot of times, if something's a hard decision is hard to make, it's probably the right one. If it was easy, then it wouldn't take all this conversation. It wouldn't take all this time. We wouldn't have to talk to all these people, but we do, because we have to make the right decision at the end of the day. And I'm proud of our district and the fact that we are doing that. But I don't want this. I just want the community to know that I don't want this. I want our kids in school just as much as everyone else. And I am going to be so happy and dancing and celebrating just as much as everybody else when we are able to have our kids back in school fully and being able to have their normal lives back to them, because that's what needs to happen. And right now we just have to make some safer choices so that we can get there. And we need our community to support that by wearing masks. We need our community to support that by trying to limit the amount of people that they're spending time with outside of their homes. And even though that's difficult and holidays are coming, we know that's a big ask. We want kids back in school, so we've all got to do our part to get that to happen as soon as possible. As far as the election goes, I too was like Kim and is super happy with the fact that we had record-breaking turnout, because what it means is that our country and our citizens in our country are listening and they're using their voice by voting. And I don't care who people vote for. I want everyone to vote that can. And so I was so proud of everybody that did that. And as far as our governing board election, it's super humbling to see so many people that would mark your name on a ballot. So that was my yay happiness of the week, was that it's just like, wow, that many people marked our names on a ballot. That's pretty impressive, because I thought last time was a lot, but this time is even more. And of course, it's presidential election, so there's more people voting, but it's still just super humbling. And I'm excited for us to continue in this role. I'm excited to get to know our new board member, and I'm ready to move on to different, more important things than this, hopefully at some point. So we can get back to doing what we want to do, of making sure that we're providing, you know, good things for our kids in a normal school environment.
I think we are all looking forward to that, Melissa. Tanya, I'll let you go next.
So like everybody else, the study session was really enlightening, and thank you, Kim, for, steering that a bit. And I am really excited to see how all this pans out. I'll have to be able to peek my head in as much as I can moving forward. I feel like I'm going to be missing so many things. I see all these little things coming up, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not going because I'm not going to vote on that. So, but I really appreciate the engagement of everybody. And again, I hope that I can still, kind of be abreast on some of these things, because there's so many exciting things that this board has really taken a hold of, and not just talked about, but made movements and actions towards. One of the things I kind of was going to say earlier, and I wasn't really sure what the right spot was, but, we deal so much with, like the survey, people from both sides with different opinions, different frustrations. But one of the things, and I hope we do it enough, and I want to make sure that we're always doing it, is our appreciation, again, for our teachers, for our admin, for our custodians, for our bus drivers, all of the people. We've all gotten so many more emails than I've ever gotten, and I've been part of some heated timeframes with district, with zoning and changes and things like that. But I've never gotten this many, and I want people to know that I read them all. I don't respond to them all, but I certainly read every single one of them. And one of the things that I think should be super clear and really public, I will tell you, I don't think out of all the emails or texts or whatever discussions I've had, I don't think that I have had a single person, even the most kind of angry person, at least to me, express anything but gratitude to the teachers. I don't think that there's, regardless of how frustrated they may be with the situation, I think everybody, myself included, as a parent, cannot express my appreciation enough for the work, the effort, the heart that our teachers show our children every day. I just want it to be clear that I think for the teachers to know that I think our frustrations, whatever they are as a board, and again, everything that I hear is really not directed that direction. So I just want, again, it's just, I think I've thought about it so many times. I just want it to be so clear how appreciative we are and how hard our teachers work. And also the parents, one of the things through the board reports or through the principal reports was seeing how much our PTSA, even though we've not really physically there as much, has really shown a lot of support that way as well. So anyway, that I just really wanted to make that apparent and clear, and personally, and as well as kind of the general feeling that I get from people writing me. So that's really all I have.
Agreed. And I would hope that people continue to support our teachers and staff. They need it for sure. As Melissa mentioned earlier, we've certainly asked a lot of them, and we'll continue to do that throughout this next couple of months for sure. So I won't go into too much. I think everyone here, we're lucky that we can kind of pop in and out of the same thing. So, the county meeting and some of the training on equity and the webinars and things like that have just been fascinating and have really opened my eyes. I am not on the Diversity Empowerment Committee, but have just been hearing updates through, our board updates and our study session. And I've just been in awe with the group of dedicated staff members, community members, parents, et cetera, that have come together despite everything else that's going on and said, this is a priority to us. This is important. And we're gonna do the hard work of figuring this out together. And I so appreciate that. And I can't wait until next meeting when, you know, everything is kind of unfolded and we actually see all the work that you guys have been doing and the goals and the diversity statement and where you guys are going to take us moving forward. So thank you for all of that work, and I'm excited to see what comes next. One other thing that I will say outside of all of those things that I attended, and this is just more from a parent perspective, but I love being able to do these parent things as a board member because I get to see both sides of things, and it really helps enlighten me when I make certain decisions. But I attended the curriculum night for my kids just actually prior to this meeting this evening, and again, it's amazing to me how really in just an instant, in a week's time, right, we're pivoting from, okay, we're going to do this. Nope, we're going to do it online. Okay, here's this. We've got all of the resources ready to go, and everything ran smoothly, right? They recorded it for parents that couldn't be there. They're going to post it later. I've already received emails as I'm sitting in this meeting about where to go and where to get the information. So our teachers, our staff, our front office workers, they have figured this out, right? They figured out these pieces of how to get everybody where they need to go and still get all of the information out to parents in a timely fashion. So thank you for that. It's great to still be a part of it, even though we can't, attend in person on campus like we normally would. Okay, so that will conclude our board and superintendent reports. Thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. So I will entertain a motion to approve that. Unless someone has something they'd like to pull off.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
All right, thank you. I'm going to assume there's no discussion on that, so I will move forward. All of those in favor.
I do have one question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim. I shouldn't ever assume. Go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. One of the items on the consent agenda, item 12A, is an out-of-state travel request. And I just wanted to verify what the cancellation policy is on that out-of-state travel request. The request is for sometime in February. And I'm more than supportive of the training that we are sending folks to for conscious discipline, but I just feel in the days of COVID, I should ask the question on cancellation.
Yes, Ms. Moran, we've contacted Conscious Discipline, and if they call it based on the data in their area, it'll be a full refund. If we cancel up to 30 days before the event, it'll be a full refund. 14 to 28 days, it'll be a charge of $100, and up to 14 days, no refund. So we'll be really looking at those timelines and ensuring that we are canceling if we need to in the appropriate time frame to get the most money we can back.
Great, thank you, Ms. DePlane. I am ready to vote, Danielle.
Okay. Because we are virtual again, I'm sorry guys, we're gonna have to do this individually just so that everybody can hear. And also if you're following along online, board members, make sure that you record your vote electronically as well. So Kimberly Moran, I will allow you to vote first. Sorry, you're just first on my screen. I don't mean to pick on you, but I'll let you vote first.
Kimberly Moran, yay.
Elaine?
Elaine Weathersby, yay.
Tanya?
Tanya Fitzer, yay. Of course, the dog bark.
Melissa?
Melissa Zeidema, yay.
Okay. Daniel Clymer, I am also a yay. Motion carries. Okay. So that will take us all the way down to item 13A, and that is the 2019-2020 principal and teacher aggregate of performance classifications. And that is Gina DeCoste and Monica Sanders.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. You have the data in front of you, and I know that there were some questions that had been emailed, so I'm happy to answer those. This is basically data that the state requests from us that we provide. It's not necessarily something that we use for any planning purposes or anything like that.
So Gina, can you say more about that? So you don't use it for any planning purposes. Does this correlate to pay increases or 301 monies? I mean, what? I guess I'm not clear. Yeah, this is a separate measure that we're utilizing.
No, this is basically a combination of all of the teacher evaluations. So this is all of our teachers and the categories that they break down into. Yes, on their individual evaluations, it does result in a performance pay increase for them because of the student growth on our district assessments that are on standard 6 of the teacher evaluation. So the higher the growth coefficient, the more points that they're going to get, which would bring them up to a higher bonus level potentially.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I thought I knew what this was, and now I'm feeling a little confused. So if I'm a teacher and I have my review that I'm getting from my principal at the end of the year, am I getting either a highly effective or effective rating? Or
we actually do our performance pay based on points. We don't like, well, we do highly effective and effectively rate our teachers, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's an integral part of our evaluation piece, but according to the score that they get, they are placed in one of those 2 categories, and we have to report those categories to the state.
Okay, so let me clarify. I mean, I asked some questions before the meeting, so I would like to ask those questions in a public forum so that we're all on the same page.
Sure.
So my first question was, I understand that COVID impacted state testing, meaning the standardized AZM2 in the spring of 2020, so we don't have the usual data. But I'd like to discuss if the ratings given correlate to student performance. So let me piggyback on that question by saying these ratings that we're seeing here, which seem to be extremely high in the highly effective category, is that an anomaly based on the fact that we rated teachers on the school performance as opposed to their disaggregated data?
It actually isn't. Our teachers, this is, I didn't look back at exactly what last year's was, but this is pretty representative of what our teachers are making, because overall, when you look at growth coefficients for our teachers on our district data, we're seeing more than a year's growth from the majority of our teachers, which would be considered highly effective. So I don't think that it really impacted it in a different way than what we would see, but I can definitely I could pull board docs while we're sitting here talking. I could look at last year's and tell you exactly, but I'll wait till we're finished answering your questions.
Okay. No, I mean, I think you don't have to look that up. I mean, if you're confident that, 96% of our teachers normally do receive highly effective ratings, I guess I would just question the correlation between these ratings and the actual measures for student success. I understand that some of those measures for student success include things that might not be measurable, like student connection and social emotional support and things like that. But when we look at testing, we do have a certain percentage, and I don't know how that memorized, a certain percentage of our students who are not performing. And so you're saying 96% of our teachers are highly effective, but we don't have 96% of our students who are highly performing or highly proficient, might be more of the terminology that you would use when it comes to the standards. So my question becomes, how do those 2 things correlate with each other? And one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because in that study session that we had last month, we talked about how we're changing our grading practices because our grades for students A, B, C, D don't always support what we're seeing on their performance of the standards. So mastery of the standards doesn't necessarily correlate with an A, and we're trying to improve the correlation between those 2 things. So my question would be, is this a good opportunity, or my statement would be, is this a good opportunity for us to not only redetermine how we're grading students, but also redetermine how we're grading teachers and principals so that the performance of our students is better correlated to the evaluations we're giving to our professionals?
So that's a tricky question. And the agenda item is whether or not you approve submitting this to the State Department. So I think this is a good question that would take a deeper conversation with Brian Owen about how we look at the data. But when you're saying that not all of our students are proficient, basically is what you're saying. So we have a group, but when you take that group and you spread that across the entire district, and a teacher has 30 kids, she might have 2 of those kids. So her overall growth would be very high, but 2 of those kids in every class across the district then creates that lump sum group of students that aren't performing at that level. So there are a lot of different things to look at, and Brian could do a much better job digging into that for you. And I will say that on Standard 6, when we're accounting for student growth, it's 33% of the evaluation process. And we could look at changing that because now we can be lower. There was a point, according to the state, the revised statute prior to last year, that we couldn't go any lower than 33% of student growth being accounted for in the teacher evaluation. So it's definitely something that we can look at.
Okay, I guess as a follow-up, then I would like to request a study session to evaluate, just as we're evaluating our student grading practices, to evaluate our teacher and principal rating practices.
Okay.
So so I don't have a problem approving what is being presented tonight, because that's the system that we currently use. My comments and questions are to clarify that system, and I guess to say that that system doesn't seem to be working to me. So I would like to find out more about that system and then see if we can improve that so that it better reflects what's actually happening. And I know we have amazing teachers and amazing principals, but I find it hard to believe that everyone is I've worked in a lot of large organizations, and I find the skeptical part of me finds it hard to believe we have zero developing folks. So,
well, like I said, when you look at student growth, it's 33% of their evaluation. So you could have a teacher who is effective in some areas and developing in some areas, but her student growth was through the roof. And so they got all their points in student growth, which kind of brings that other up because it is 33% of the evaluation. So it's a balancing thing, and we can definitely lay it all out and walk through that at a study session. I think that I would be happy to do it. Brian Owen would be happy to, Superintendent Gunning and Monica, just all put the pieces together for you guys.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Can I just make a clarification? Because I think, I mean, data is kind of a tricky thing, right? Depending on how you look at it is, through what lens. But when you guys were making the correlation between, okay, so 95% of our teachers are highly effective, but 95% of our students aren't highly proficient. But I mean, I'm going to make a statement, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm asking for clarification. But student growth isn't measured on only who's highly proficient. I mean, you could be well below that, and you make growth to only be proficient, but you may make a year's growth in that time. Is that correct? I mean, we don't only say if you're proficient to highly proficient. So a year's growth can come from not proficient at all to, meeting the standards or even going above. So, and that growth still counts, correct? I mean, that would still be a high percentage of growth, even though it was at the bottom of the spectrum, so to speak.
Yes, and that's huge. That's a huge piece of it.
Okay.
And it's
important. I just want to make sure I totally understand
that you're not just getting credit for how many proficient kids you have. Like you said, it's the growth from falls far below, because when you have kids that are 3 and 4 years behind, you can't expect a teacher to get them 3 or 4 years caught up in one school year. A 1 year or over a year, or sometimes when students are slow learners and that low, it may even be a little bit less growth.
And so that growth, I mean, that sort of coefficient that we always talk about is measured in individual student growth, if I'm correct, not sort of the aggregate of whether they're proficient or highly proficient or whatever. Okay, I just wanted, just for my own knowledge, I want to make sure that I was making that correlation properly. Okay.
That's a great clarification.
Any other questions or comments or whatever? Okay, Kim, I have it marked down about the study session and getting that. I do think we have something on the docket for data coming up potentially in the next couple of months. I'll have to check on that. So maybe that's something that we could, put together. Gina, I think you're saying December or maybe something.
I think so.
Yeah, it's December or January. So maybe we can put those together if Brian would be willing to help us with that. Okay, then I will entertain a motion if we are ready, if there's no further discussion. Or I move. I can do it myself. I forget this sometimes. I move to approve the 2019-2020 principal and teacher aggregate of performance classifications as provided.
I second.
Danielle, this does not need action.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much. I'm not reading my color-coded agenda. Man, I'm so sorry. I was gonna get through this whole agenda and do it right, but nope. I've got the big guy in the sky telling me I'm doing it wrong. Folks, I really apologize. This is information only, so we don't have to vote on it. We will just move forward. 13B, LESD Digital Learning Academy program guide. And Gina, I think you are doing.
It's still me. So we modeled our program guide for the DLA for next year somewhat after the traditional academy to give some uniformity to what we're doing within the district. Obviously it's different expectations. So I hope that you had a chance to read through it and give feedback. This obviously isn't for approval because we do want your feedback on this. And we hope to bring it next month for approval. And at the same time, next month, we'd like to ask for recommitment from the families that are currently in it, or for commitment to give us an idea. Remember, we showed the planning timeline last month. I think it was last month. And so that's kind of where we're at.
I have a question, Gina, not necessarily on the program guide itself, but just in developing this, and we did kind of go over the working timeline last time, and it's also on board docs for anyone that wants to follow along in the notes section. Is there as you ask for recommitments and as you go back to families and say, would you be interested in continuing this on? Is there a number that we're reaching for in order to determine whether we move forward or not? Meaning, if we have very low recommitments, do we have the wherewithal to keep going and thinking that we're going to, get folks from potentially outside our district or other folks that are maybe in-person learning now that would want to go back to that?
Well, we haven't, oops, I just dropped my computer. We haven't set anything in stone, but some of the discussions that we've had as of late would be setting it up similar to one of our K-8 models for staffing and for class sizes and things like that. And those are things we need to talk with you guys about in the future to decide, do you want class sizes to be consistent across the district in DLA, in TA, in every class that any kid is in? And obviously for equity purposes, that would be great. But thinking about a K-8 with K-5 having 3 teachers at every grade level, and then 6 through 8 having 4 teachers at each grade level. So they would have a nice 4-person team, and just being able to start it at that and cap the classes and get a good year under our belt of running. And yes, we would be able to open it up to open enrollment outside the district, but we would begin with the students that are currently in it, and then we would go within our district, and then Wendy would do her magic with open enrollment out of the district.
Right, but is there a minimum number, because this is a new thing, right? Is there any minimum, or no, we just would adjust our staffing levels based on what the people that did commit to that?
We would adjust our staffing levels based on that. And that's with the assumption that we would have at least a class at every grade level.
Right, obviously. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I'm just saying that we're still in the planning phase of this. So depending on what the initial commitment survey looks like, you guys can start planning staffing and then adjust that up or down based on the needs that come back from that initial survey. I understand.
Staffing and housing and all of that stuff.
Right. Okay, yeah, I think there is much to be done, obviously, still. I mean, you guys have a very good start on it, but there's still a lot of, things pieces that need to fall into place. Obviously, creating an entire, 17th school sort of format, even though we had kind of a running start this year. I think next year is going to look a whole lot different. We have a little bit more time to plan for it. So any other comments or questions on the program guide for Gina right now? This will not come back for a full vote until the next meeting. So if there are any other pieces of feedback or comments after this evening, you can just send those back to the district if you choose to.
I do have one question. Gina, as part of the feedback that we received from the survey, the DLA survey that was performed, it seems to be there's somewhat interest in an accelerated or honors type program. I see that's not in the program guide. Are we just going to see what the demand is for that based on enrollment and then try to accommodate where we can?
Well, yes. And what we're doing right now is taking that feedback and seeing how we can implement it currently and what's going to work for us for the rest of the year to see if it goes into the program for next year. So teachers are trying some different things, some kind of like enrichment activities that you would normally do in the classroom that now you can do online. And they're getting so good at the technology and going above and beyond, and then also pulling small groups and helping kids that need to be pulled along. So that's good.
Yeah, it sounds like they're doing the things that we used to do back before TA was separated. So, just kind of doing those different groups with those kids. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay, we will keep moving along. Thank you, Gina, for that. Appreciate it. I know there's a lot of work that goes into creating that, and there's still a lot of work to be done. So congratulations on your work so far.
You're welcome. And really, honestly, this is a lot of it. Like I said, we used the TA, we used our AOI application, just making sure that everything lines up into perfect pieces. So we're not telling the State Department we're doing one thing as an AOI and then telling parents we'd like to do this as a digital learning academy. We're making sure that everything is lined up and going without any kinks.
That's great. Okay, moving on to 13C. It's our first reading of policy revision BEBD. Okay, let me try that one more time. BEDB, the agenda, and we'll have Superintendent Gunning presenting that for us tonight.
Madam President, members of the governing board, as a follow-up from our study session where we asked to incorporate the conscious discipline skills and strategies and components into our governing board meetings, which will then help us to be completely have conscious discipline from top to bottom in every facet of every piece that we do. We wanted to bring back BEDB to review our governing board agenda and to obtain any feedback as we go through the process.
Okay, Megan, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I told you in advance I was going to put you on the spot, so I hope that you're ready. It's kind of cheating, but
well, it's really not on the spot. I'm ready.
Right, exactly, but for those of us in the audience, right, it's on the spot. So quick recap for those that don't make it to every single governing board meeting or study session. A few weeks ago, we had a study session where Megan walked us through. Well, originally the board and district administration, we've been partnering on this for several months now, trying to figure out how to incorporate conscious discipline into our governing board meetings. I think our district administrators, obviously, but our governing board also feels very strongly that what is happening at a campus level, what is happening at admin council and our highest levels of administration are all practicing these things, and they're things that we're doing in the classroom with our kids. We should be doing them here as well. And that's an important commitment kind of from the top down, and we really wanted to make sure that was integrated. So we tasked the district, and Megan specifically, who is our conscious discipline expert, to say, how do we do that in a format in our governing board meetings so that a couple different reasons. Number one, because I think, we could all do with a little social and emotional help before some of these stressful meetings at times. But equally important to help educate our parents and our community on exactly what conscious discipline is and what it isn't, to be totally honest. So we've, based on our last meeting, we came up with a handful of things that we could incorporate into our meeting. And so this is kind of the on the spot part. I just want you to run through and literally take maybe 2 minutes, not a lot of time, to just run through each one of those things, what they may look like in practice, and then how we have the potential of rotating those amongst board members so that you see everybody participating in this.
Perfect. So what I presented at the study session was starting meetings the brain smart way. And what we know about brain research is we come in, our students come in, our children come in, board members come in, and you've dealt with all but different chaos, right? And in order for us to get to our highest brain state, our executive state, there's a couple things that conscious discipline teaches us and that we do everywhere, like you said, in our meetings, in our classrooms, to ensure that we are ready to tackle anything in front of us in the best way, and using our executive skills to problem solve and be solutions oriented and all that. So there's a few components of the Brain Smart Start that we talked about, and we talked through ideas that you could use, how you could utilize or how you could implement them at the board meetings. So the one is activity to connect, and it's greeting guests and as they enter, and greeting each other as you enter. And then the next one is activity to disengage stress, and that's that belly breathing we talked about, so that one person could be in charge of leading the board in a breathing activity prior to getting started. Another one is activity to unite, and it's a way for you all as a board to come together, even though you came from all different areas throughout the day or the week or different schools or different neighborhoods. You're coming together as one board to truly tackle some of the obstacles and things in front of you. And the way that the idea that I had is that you could have one leader each month to lead just the chant of the district's mission statement. And that is a way that you guys can just start, that you are on one team ready to go. And then an activity to commit. And that is choosing a commitment. One person could be responsible for choosing a commitment. It could be one of the norms that you all voted on couple months ago that maybe that person really wanted help with. Oftentimes when I set a commitment, it's something that I need or that, and so I ask my admin team to commit to that for that meeting. And so I brought up the idea of one member of the board being responsible for bringing a commitment and asking everybody, all the members of the board, are you willing to commit to that during this board meeting? And then you make a collective commitment out loud together. And what we say as admin teams, we say 1, 2, 3, I'm willing, or 1, 2, 3, thumbs up. But everybody gives that symbolic agreement that they are on board for that commitment. And then the other one I added to that, which isn't directly a part of the Brain Smart Start, but we found it very useful, is a daily message. And basically it could be a message for your board meeting. And one person brings a quote that they think will get everybody laser focused on what's in front of them, or maybe it's something in the community. We often do something in the community or the nation that we might see that fellow people are struggling with, and we bring a quote to get everybody started off in a positive way before a board meeting starts. So the 4 jobs would be disengaging stress, activity to unite, activity to commit, and the daily message. And what we do as admin is that we just have a schedule where we rotate through that, and you have the schedule just laid out for the whole year. So you know that month what your job is. And basically what I do, if I have a job that month, for the week before, I'm listening, I'm looking, I'm trying to find, the best, just the best way I could bring my job to be helpful for the board. And so that's what I would recommend that you all consider to do starting in January, or I think that's what we decided. And like Jody said, every year we begin implementing a little bit at a deeper level in another department, or bringing it to a new level. And I think just bringing it to you all as the board, and that you start experiencing it and demonstrating it and modeling it will be so huge, just to get the full circle of conscious discipline in our district.
Absolutely. I'm excited. We've experienced it in a few of our study sessions and other meetings where board members have been invited and things like that to admin meetings or meetings at the district office. So I think most of us are at least familiar with it, and or we've seen our kids do it at home. So we're familiar with it in that way, or have heard them talk about it. So I'm excited to make sure that we are integrating these meetings into best practices of our district as well. So I'm anxious to see that get started. Any comments on that from other board members in terms of modifying our policy to do that? If not, I had one other suggestion. So basically what we're doing, this is the first read of this policy, and in our policies, we have how our agenda is typically laid out of our meetings. So that's why we're reviewing this, because in order to add that in there, we need to do it. If you look in the notes on the board docs online system, there have been some suggestions in order to kind of switch our current agenda. So I'll go through those really quickly. You can follow along with me there. As we know, sometimes our meetings can run long, and we can tend to have longer discussions about certain items. So I know in an effort to try and be more efficient with our time and things like that, I thought maybe we could make some small suggestions to our agenda. Not promising we will not still have 3-hour meetings, but we're working to get that down, both for our staff time and for our parents' time that are watching at home. One way that I thought that we could do this, we currently have a few reports in the top of our agenda. So if you look on tonight's agenda, we have our administrator reports, and then both, Superintendent Gunning and the board reports. Typically our reports from administrators, kind of fall under that information only, obviously, and recognitions and celebrations. So I would suggest that we actually move it underneath that recognitions and presentations. So if we have something to say at that time, we will. If we don't, then we move through it, and we don't have to, spend additional time on it if people don't have anything to say. We will still have all of the board reports from every elementary school, every school campus, every, director's report, all of that kind of stuff. Doesn't change the information we're getting, just changes the format of that. Also, another option here that's listed is moving the action items up a little closer and having those information presentations down to the bottom. Typically, the reason why people would join us, whether it would be staff or parents at home, would be for the decision-making that's happening that evening in the action items. And so moving that up right after our reports, and then going into our information-only presentations and or consent agenda closer to the end. And those are suggestions that I had. So I will open the floor now for people that have any other additional comments or anything to swap around as we're doing this.
I have a couple of things. One, for sometimes we have information that we get in one of those information presentations that we then later have to vote on something for. So I would be concerned if we flip that in the agenda of how that might mess with those. Not to say I don't want to make our meeting shorter, because I really do. But so I don't know if that would mess with anything by doing that. And then also in talking about length of time, I am excited for us to be able to be modeling our conscious discipline stuff for our families as well, especially when we have all these community members that are now engaged in our meetings like we never have before. That being said, adding extra things to our very long meetings right now is, I don't know, we're getting some community feedback from people that our meetings are too long. So I don't know if we want to add more things that are going to take up more time, unless we find a way to make our meetings not be so long, however that works out.
Well, I'm all ears to making that more efficient, for sure. So I can respond, and others, please jump in, because I'm not the only voice here. But in terms of information items that would be presented in the incorrect order for action items, Superintendent Gunning, I'll let you weigh in on this as well, but there shouldn't be any action items that are, any information items that are presented for vote later. So if it's under the action discussion section, those presentations should happen during that time. So Melissa, I think that would that should take care of it. But obviously I don't know everything about every presentation that we've had. So if anyone else from the district would like to weigh in on that, I mean, I feel like if it's an action item, the presentation should happen during that section. But if it doesn't, then please bring that up now, because I don't want to make a change that would hurt us having that information.
Well, I think if I could just pipe in here, I think what Melissa might be referring to is occasionally it seems as though we have some budget summaries, and that might be a separate really meeting before our meeting that then we end up voting on. But Wendy might be able to shed more light on that if there's ever any budget items in information that we end up then voting on later.
It may just be extenuating circumstances. I know this happened. I know what Melissa's referring to. It happened when we voted for Wonders. We had a presentation beforehand, then based on the information that Sarah provided and the speakers that she brought in, then we made the vote on that curriculum. That's just one example that I can recall off the top of my head.
Okay.
Do you think, and I know Melissa, because I was thinking the same thing. I know there have been some times where it's not, the information item isn't necessarily what you're voting on, but it's helpful information in that process. So maybe just kind of keeping the information first. And a lot of times the information items might be something, I think that it would be just as important to the parents, because sometimes there's things that are going to happen. They're getting information and they're going to be taking action, or, it might be a survey or something that they're, gaining too. So that's the only thing. I was kind of thinking the same thing of keeping information still first, and then right after it, the action items. But you could move definitely the consent agendas down to the bottom. You could do that at the end.
So that was my next question, was consent agenda stuff. We have the ability to take things off of the consent agenda and then have it be an action item for us to vote on separately for discussion. So how would that work if we move that all up to the end?
It would just happen then. You would just remove it and then vote on it at that time. If I'm wrong, someone chime in, but I've seen other districts have their agenda set up this way, where they either have consent lower down or at the bottom. And I would imagine that, for in the instance like you're referring to, that we would request that something be pulled off, or we have more information about it or whatever, that then it would just be voted on directly after that. If I'm wrong, someone chime in and tell me. I know that doesn't happen all that often in our things, but we have to make sure that we make room for that in case that does happen, for sure.
So we could have, since these are just suggestions and it is the first read, we'll look into a lot of these questions, and then we'll send stuff out to you guys in a Friday update to update you. And then that way we can tighten up whatever the recommendation would be at the second read.
Okay. I think everyone is in favor for making these as efficient, as effective as possible. Nobody wants to be in a 3 or 4 hour meeting. I know we have a lot of them, but that's not something that we want to do. But what I will say is that this is important work. And if it takes us 3 or 4 hours to get through it, that's what we need to do. We also have study sessions and additional meetings. So I think we should also make use of that and being able to do some of the information presentations and things that we've talked about tonight as we referred to them as study sessions. Continue to use that second meeting a month in our study session to break off some of those things and have those information presentations there as well, so that we can equal out some of those meetings, so we don't have a really long meeting one time and a shorter one the next. So that might help as well. But any other ideas for making more efficient meetings, please either send them my way or to Superintendent Gunning, because like she said, this is just a first read. So we're tossing out ideas, and then, we'll get an update on any legal stuff we want to make sure that we're aware of before we vote. And then it will be back in front of us next month. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, perfect. We are at 13D, which is our governing board goals for 2021 school year, and our goal number 2, review. And I believe this is with Melissa and Elaine.
Okay, so on the agenda, if you click on the first link, now this is very rudimental in that we're throwing out some ideas. We gathered what feedback you all had sent in, and I'd like to go down this list to maybe get a little bit more insight to specific dates. So when we first started talking about having a calendar, I would like to see this on an actual calendar format. For me, that just kind of makes sense. Some of the feedback that we received was number one, 2 meetings per month. Currently, we have 1 meeting listed. I know that Melissa had said that there were other boards that were practicing this. Melissa, do you have any insight you want to share on that particular item?
I just know that there's several districts around us that do 2 meetings a month versus 1 meeting a month. So if we're looking at doing calendar changes, I think this is the time for us to possibly discuss the idea of doing that. Like we were just talking about how our meetings are very long and it's very hard for our staff to have to be at them for so long. We have families now that are engaged and are watching it, and they're just very long meetings and it's difficult on all of us. And I think that if we could move to a 2 meeting per month calendar, that would help us in being able to give every item the attention that it needs, so that we're not at the end of the night after like 3 or 4 hours and we're on the last action item where we have to discuss and vote. We're all just done at that point. So that's just kind of where that came from. I don't know what everybody else's feelings are about that.
Okay. Line item number 2, the Litchfield Foundation calendar, that's currently listed. We'd like to keep that. Item number 3, for Megan's conscious discipline responsibilities per person monthly. I think if we do decide that that is something that we can add without adding too much time, maybe we can shorten it down to 1 of those items per month if that's for time purposes. We could discuss who will do what at one of our study sessions and just basically fill in the conscious discipline, and then we can add to that later. Jody's topics monthly, I've added down to the bottom here. This is the format that you provide, Jody, on your report. We can easily just add this into that calendar format. The next few items I think may have come from Tanya, Kim, Danielle. I'm not sure which one they came from. Students' assessments dates 3 times a year. I figured we could look at that as a not a quarter, but as a term. We can look at just adding that strictly as in 4 months, 5 months. Employment by level, student assessment, student discipline, and attendance. I just need a little bit more insight. Do you want to see that on our calendar every month to go over, or is that something that you want to look at bi-monthly?
Elaine, that was my feedback, and really that needs to go hand in hand with our equity work. So we can determine if that should be reviewed twice a year or 3 times a year. I also suggested number 5, the student assessment data 3 times per year. I think if we have a beginning, we can compare that to the end of the previous year. We have a mid-year to see how we're progressing, and then end of the year to see kind of where we ended up on that. So I'm open to the district's feedback as far as how often we should be assessing the equity data, but that needs to be in the calendar so that we can hold ourselves accountable to the equity work that we are trying to accomplish.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I like that idea very much. That's pretty much going to follow all the way down to the class size review, the student data review, the performance pay, facilities updates. We can see what the district want to add in there, as well as the survey reviews. We're currently on our governing board calendar. It is listed the continuing education, the trainings, the webinars, the school calendar, conference opportunities are also currently listed. One other thing that we thought might be nice to add would be community event opportunities as we individually find out about them, if we want to let Amy know about them, and then they can be added onto the list. So, oh, hey, guess what? I'm supposed to have dinner next weekend. It's not going to happen. Oh, is there anything going on in the community that I might want to take advantage of, which I think plays hand in hand with our outreach into the community as one of our other goals. And then the ASBA events, which are currently listed as well.
One other thing that I will add, I think this is great, Elaine, Melissa, thank you very much for putting this together. I think the, a lot of these things we do at various times of the year already, or, are available upon request. I think, the beauty of this is having it in one place where it's easy to sort of hold ourselves accountable, because we know twice a year we're supposed to do this, and we're going to do it in January, and we're going to do it in August or whatever. And so I think that's going to be really nice to have that in a calendar format. So, for the district staff, obviously, who's planning all of this and getting all of this information together, that's helpful, but also for us to know what's coming up and, at sort of what points decisions need to be made and things like that. One thing I will say, Kim and I have been working, long-term, we've all been working, but we got on board goal number 4 about kind of that outreach, Elaine, as you mentioned. One of the things that we talked about was doing a letter kind of from the board, whether it's from me as the president or from multiple board members, potentially on a quarterly or a seasonal basis. So that's potentially one thing that we could add to this calendar of just making sure that is written and, given to Amy for uploading and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. I'll add that right now.
And I am working on a timeline for that, which will be sent to Amy so she can incorporate it into all of this work in terms of if we're going to do it seasonally, when that would be due and need to be written and all of that kind of stuff. So I will rely on Amy to communicate that out to everyone as I'll send it to her.
Okay. The one other thing that I was thinking about, and I just don't know if it would just, cloud the calendar too much, is if you go onto the district website and pull up the calendar, it lists all of the testing, whenever our benchmark testing is going on, our gifted testing, we could add it to it as well, just so it's all boom, right on a snapshot right there. But that calendar is easily accessible. So if we want to add it, great. If not, it's okay.
And where would this live? If this is in a calendar format, or is it going to be in a listing format? So we know, let's say every January we do, our meeting or study session or what have you would cover this and this, right? Is that what you're anticipating? So we know sort of on a monthly or quarterly basis what things we're going to be looking at, talking about, or walking through?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the majority of these things could be on a full year snapshot. We just plug in the dates and it sits there and it lives there. The only thing that would be any different would be the additions of community events that would be as learned and added.
Okay.
Same thing with the continuing education. They're constantly coming up with new stuff that would need to be added as well.
I think this is great. I mean, a lot of this stuff exists in various places. So really just, pulling it all together. And, one thing I will say, thank you to our board members for making sure we don't overwhelm our district staff with trying to, all of their requests and all the stuff that we like to know. I think this is, will allow us to review things in a timely way, but not so much that it requires them to do an additional amount of work on a monthly basis to pull information that we're not utilizing. So this seems to be
absolutely. And then Megan, if it's okay, what we can do is we can sit down, you, Melissa, and I are on a Zoom or just via email, come up with some of those monthly topics, and then at our meeting with the new board member, then we can kind of draw straws, draw numbers, and kind of see where we fall as to who will take what responsibility for what conscious discipline action we may have.
That sounds good, Elaine.
Okay.
And I like the idea, even in our last conversation and here, you kind of talking about, wanting to make sure our meetings are really efficient. So I think, I will say personally for me, it is important that we include some type of conscious discipline. We've been talking about it for a while, and I think it's important for us to show that. If there is an easier way to do that or a more efficient way to do that in terms of maybe choosing 1 or 2 things instead of having 4 or 5 things, I'm on board for that. So if you feel like we need to pare it down, I'm confident that you guys, along with Megan, will figure that out. And I will take the short straw the first month. So whatever anyone wants to do.
Okay, great. And maybe at the study session that Kim requested the action to discuss, and Kim, my apologies, I'm not a loss for what you had requested the action on. I believe it was for the teacher performance, correct? Can Can we add on there the discussion to talk about more than one meeting a month? Is that something that we have to do at a study session? Do we have to add it as an action item to discuss it further? Or are we just kind of throwing it out there and thinking, oh yeah, we'll talk about it later?
Well, I think we're talking about it right now.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's on the agenda, so I think that's what we're talking about right now. So I think, if this is a request that is being made to move forward starting in January, now would be the time to talk about it, because this would be, we can discuss it now, kind of pros and cons. We'd have a chance to get some feedback from our district administration staff, which I think is really important. And then when we come back in December and make these approvals, that's when we would make that determination.
Okay, so as of right now, we have one meeting, we have one study session. There are some months where we only have the meeting. For instance, for November, we didn't, we did have that study session. So adding one more meeting onto that to lighten the load of the meeting. Jody, what does that look like to your staff? Is that just adding more work to your staff, or does that help them in not making it quite so much all the time?
I think it could be both. I think what we'd have to do is really look at the commitment of being timely in our meetings. And because if we're going to add another 3-hour meeting and then possibly
you don't want another 3-hour meeting for sure.
So I think that's what we need to look at. And I know a long time ago when we had ASBA come out and train originally, and we kind of were looking at meetings, meeting structures, efficiency of meetings. They really talked about some different strategies. So I think it'd be good to revisit some of those strategies. Also, I think looking at some highly effective districts that have their board meetings pretty concise and seeing what is the average board meeting time, because what should our goal be? I don't know necessarily. When I talk to some of my fellow superintendents out there, a lot of them, their meetings last 1 hour to an hour and a half. And they have one meeting a month. So I think it would be helpful. And I think we gathered this a while back, but I want to say it was like 2 years ago. But I think it'd be helpful for us to look at several districts and see like how many meetings do they have? So you have that information to take in. How many meetings do they have and what's the average length of their meeting? Not during like a COVID time when we know there's all this stuff. But so that way we kind of know what would be an appropriate goal. And then I think having all of these items for me to be able to go back and sit down and talk to everybody to see about time commitment, I think is helpful as well. I will tell you that so the majority of your executive staff is working on preparing for the board meeting all day. Well, a big chunk of a day the week before, gathering all the information from everybody. And then it pretty much takes the day, or at least a half a day of answering questions, gathering additional information, making sure we haven't missed anything. So
that would throw
those are things to kind of just think about of what do you want,
I would assume that a second meeting being added to the month would not include any administration report at all. It would probably just be left open to information needed for future vote in the month or in the upcoming. So I could see how they could be like, oh God, I don't want to do any more work, but I don't think we would need them to necessarily in that regard.
Just have like your principal reports one time a month.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't need that twice.
And superintendents and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think, and that's when you look at the work from the district as a whole, but I think the lot of the legwork is preparing for all the informational pieces and the action items too.
Okay.
So I think if we could,
well, what we can do is we can move forward with the suggestions that Danielle came up with trying to streamline the meeting the way that it is. And then if we're finding that we're still going over, then we can look further into adding another meeting at obviously the discussion of the entire board. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I thought at one point we had discussed having 2 meetings per month, one being of the regular meeting and the other meeting being a study session that we could then, because the date was already on the calendar, we could then add, as we have done in the past, any specific HR topics or something like that that would need to be approved timely during that. So we had some flexibility, because it seems to me that some of the informational items that are presented in the agenda could be presented in a study session, and it would accomplish the same thing of us. Some might be required to be discussed in a regular board meeting, but others we could, based on Superintendent Gunning's recommendation, we could discuss in a study session or another, or convert that to a regular meeting.
So for instance, if we were to follow that type of scenario, what we have listed over on 14F or 14E would then fall into the study session.
It could. I mean, that would be a way also to streamline the regular meetings if we can shift some of the information that's not needed to make a decision in the regular meeting to a study session, and just make sure that we are holding those study sessions on a regular basis. And maybe that ends up being 2 study sessions on certain months, especially if we're trying to look at, at student survey or, parent survey, that's sort of information that can warrant, depending on the topic, that could warrant a 2-hour meeting in and of itself. And so there could be some times of year, and I think it would, rather than having 2 general board meetings, it would involve the same amount of work from the people who are compiling that information, but less work perhaps from the general, like IT, for example, to organize in a study session versus 2 general meetings per month. But I don't know what Superintendent Gunning, if that would streamline anything from an admin commitment standpoint or not, because we would be requiring the same presentations. It would just be in a different format potentially.
Yeah, I think it would just depend. And then you also have your IT department who's a part of the recording and all of that, that's there at all of those meetings. And then Amy and, everyone else. So I think it's just, I think I think it could be beneficial if the commitment was to get them down to like a 1 hour or 2-hour meeting. But, because otherwise then what you're doing, even if it's 2 hours, then that's 4 hours given up. And then if you add another study session, I guess we'd have to just have some commitments, like, because then if you give another meeting, which I know it's your guys' time as well, then you're asking board members to give up, 6 evenings with their family every month, or possibly. So I don't know. It's just, I just think we need to really think about it and
throw some ideas around.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, I liked your idea about just possibly just any HR we could pull into a study session. Could we not?
It depends on
I
the,
guess it would depend on the timing, right?
sometimes HR encompasses everything. So I think it would depend. Could
One
be
thing I
hiring,
will say,
policy changes at times, policy information. So
But
there's
then
some,
instead of Monica working to put together what she needs here, she would just be a week behind.
right. But remember, she would have that, like, I guess it's just spreading the work out over more days.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's more effective from an administration standpoint, because at least we kind of get it crammed in one time to deliver, rather than, basically every other week spending hours getting everything ready.
Well, I like hanging out with you guys an awful lot, just so you know, all of you, whether it's for 1 hour or 3 hours. But Melissa, I know that you have a little bit more experience in seeing the 2 meetings. So this is kind of your baby on your idea.
My reason for this is a lot of things, are long meetings, but also there are many times when we are given something to vote on and we have a lot of discussion on, and I don't know that people are totally ready to vote on it, but we have to, because if we don't vote on it right now, it's going to have a really bad impact somewhere, ultimately on students. So I would rather us have 2 meetings where if something wasn't able to be figured out, we wanted some more time to think about it or to get some more information, and then we could come back at another time in the month. I feel like that would put us all at ease a little more in making our decisions.
Can we request the meeting, Amy, if that were to happen? Let's say hypothetically, this meeting today, we came across an action item that needed to be voted on right away. Nobody really had a clear direction as to what happened. Are we allowed to say, can we schedule a meeting next week to do this?
Elaine, who were you directing that question to? I'm sorry.
Amy or whoever would know the right answer to that.
You can always ask for an additional meeting, for a special meeting.
If we got to the point
We
where
just
we're
have to
going
just
on
meet
and
the
on and on.
24-hour guideline for posting and.
What I would like to add to Melissa's comments is not only are there sometimes that we may not be 100% confident in the vote, there can be a time like now, I'm starting to feel it, where we've been here for 2.5 hours and I know that my brain is not functioning and firing on all pistons. And so I would like to be able to make those decisions, important action item decisions, when I am fresh and fresher than I am at the 2.5 to 3 hour or sometimes 4 hour point in the evening. So that would be a pro for me personally on having more than one meeting per month.
Okay, we're gonna have another chance in December, and we have some time right now for between now and our next meeting in December for some feedback and some internal discussions with the staff through Superintendent Gunning's office. So I would encourage us to let's curb this conversation now and take it in that direction for now. One thing I will say to this point before we move on is that I think that there are enough requests based on what happens in the meeting and that calendar of requests that we just saw to plan one meeting and one study session a month. If we do not plan a second meeting per se every month, some of those things, a regular meeting, some of those information sessions or presentations can happen during that study session. Sometimes timing is of the essence and we can't, but sometimes we can. So I guess, my position right now, until I think about it a little bit more, is that if we can divide some of those information presentations over into that study session, that would make a whole lot of sense. But again, we'll kind of take it back and work with the administration to see if that makes sense. One other thing I wanted to say really quickly, and I know to Kim's point, right, that the most important part of this is our action items and things we have to vote on and decisions that have to be made. And which is kind of my point earlier in let's move that up on the agenda, because A, that's what people are coming here for, and B, that's what's the most important part of this meeting for us and where we need to be at our best. So if we can find a way to do that, that's great. Also, this is the board's agenda, right? So we ask for things to be on here or taken off, et cetera. But for the most part, we don't actually control what's on here because so much of this is required, right? Has to be state reporting, or it has to be, we have to have 3 different policy reviews before they go and, can be voted on, et cetera. So a lot of these things we can't control. What we can control is our conversation and our discussion and things like that. And that's something that, we can all do. I'm not saying we don't need to have it. I'm just saying we can work to make that more efficient, moving forward. So I will leave it at that, and we'll see what we can do in terms of feedback moving forward, and then have this conversation in December as well and make some final decisions at that point.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, moving on to our action items. 14A, we do not have anything to address from consent agenda, so we're going to move on to 14B, which is approval of the 21-22 school year calendar with Mrs. DeGhost.
Good evening, President Clymer and members of the board, Superintendent Gunning. So last month we reviewed lots of different options, and we basically went back to a traditional calendar because the variations that we had recommended would be a later start date, which was not financially reasonable. And when we polled the teachers, when the career development team surveyed their teachers on their staff, they were not in favor of a staggered start time because of difficulty with scheduling and things like that. So if anything, people were in favor, the majority were in favor of early release days at the beginning of the year, which at this time of COVID, when our kids have been out of school so much, we're recommending that we start next year if it's a typical year and there is no COVID, with a full day and try to make it as normal as possible. Put this on the back burner until the following year. We kept, the board had a few things that you guys felt really strongly about, ending on the 20th, aligning to Agua Fria and having traditional open houses. So you'll see those in there. And schools will have the option to do virtual open houses, or teachers will have that option now. I think people have the option to do virtual now anyways, because they're so used to it. So I think we'll see a lot more of that. But I'm just here to answer any questions if you had any.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
We got feedback from a teacher. It's somebody that's commented about our calendar in the past too, about the open house being on a Friday night and then them school starting on a Monday. And one of the things that she said, and so I'd like to know from the district if this is accurate, is the last day of school not considered a school day at all? Like it doesn't count as a day because they get out so early. Does it not really count? Oh.
Mm-hmm. The last day of school does count. And we have looked into that. And I know elementary teachers, I was an elementary principal, and it is hard to do that open house on Friday night, but we have to balance that with the middle school's responsibilities for scheduling. And they have typically larger campuses than our elementaries do. And then they have scheduling conflicts. So they really need Friday to do that. People do not want our open houses, because that was a suggestion by board members. Let's do a bigger window and have all the open houses on a Thursday night. And middle school, well, not middle school, but staff members said, there's no way, like if I work at an elementary and my kid's in middle, how can I do both? There's just too many conflicts. They have to be on separate nights and something has to give. And so it just keeps falling to the elementary.
And, you know, Melissa, originally, they were flip-flopped and actually we had equal amount of requests, not only from middle school because of scheduling, but also elementary teachers, because elementary teachers prepare their rooms to, like, you know, they are pristine and decorated very nicely. And elementary teachers wanted an extra day to get their rooms ready. And I will tell you, as a principal, my teachers were decorating and finalizing every single thing all the way up till Friday afternoon when they left to go get dressed up and come back. So I know I think it'd be awesome if there was a way, like maybe, I don't know, like that would be where you would have a Tuesday start rather than a Monday start. But I don't think we could flip flop. And then it was hard. We did, I think, years ago, we had them on the same night. And I was, you know, that's hard for a family, because as a teacher, I wasn't able to get to my you know, child's open house, because you're there long after the open house is done, cleaning up and getting everything back in order.
I will say, I know this process is really hard and it was not, you know, easy at all. But one thing I will say, I appreciate the fact that you went to I believe you said the Career Development Committee, who, you know, then took this back to their campus and were able to get some feedback from teachers and things like that. You know, I think that's important. This does affect families, obviously, and our students, but it also affects the teacher's ability to, you know, have the prep time before school starts, as well as the open house time and things like that. So I appreciate that you reaching out to them and making sure that you're allowing their voices to be heard also. Anyone else have any feedback or comments?
I do have a question. Mrs. DeCoste or Superintendent Gunning, can you just refresh my memory on, I know we pushed back the parent-teacher conferences to a later date, and I see them here at the end of October. Can you tell me why those dates were chosen? I know this year I think we pushed it back to December just based on COVID, but can you just refresh my memory on that?
Sure. That was something that we had prior feedback on from the year before last year, with teachers saying they would rather have them just a little bit later so that they had more data, they had more time to know their kids and things like that. So that was something that that's not COVID related at all. And we're not doing it because we pushed them to December this year. This was something that we were looking at before.
Okay, great.
I just, may I, Danielle?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Melissa asked the question, Gina, and I just want to make sure that I understood this correctly. So dismissal the last day of school at 10:50 counts as a full day.
It counts of a day of attendance. So Wendy Qualls, maybe you want to clarify something on this? I know it counts as one of our 180 days.
Which would mean it would count as a full day.
I
In
think-
my mind, that's how I would understand that. Is that right, Wendy?
I just saw Wendy walking away for a minute, so she probably
Okay,
had.
no problem. We can jump.
I think it counts as the day as the 180 days, but then the minutes are counted within that time frame. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the suggestion in the email that we received the last time we talked about the calendar and this time before is asking to start on a Tuesday. This teacher is under the impression that the last day of school with dismissal at 10:50 doesn't really count as a full day. And so she's asking why we can't move the dismissal back further. What concerns me most about this email is that she is saying that teachers are never asked about calendars. And you're telling me that you are surveying teachers about calendars. So maybe there's a miscommunication. Maybe only some teachers are asked about calendars. Do we want teachers' input on calendars? It's kind of this big ball mess at the moment when I think about that.
Yeah, you know, Elaine, as a teacher, I can't even tell you 5, 6 years ago. Well, no, it's got to be longer than that because I was at Mabel for 8 years. When Tamara Honvelez was here, I was on the calendar committee as a teacher. So I know teachers have been involved. And I know in the last couple of years, we've asked for feedback. In the last 2 years, the career development committee has gone back. So our career development committee went back and either formally or informally surveyed their staff at a staff meeting, really narrowing it down to those 3 questions about the start dates. So, okay. I mean, I can honestly say that the majority, maybe they didn't get everyone, maybe they weren't at that staff meeting where the questions were asked, and then each career development person reported back to my survey. So I had a survey for them, like, how many of your staff, or was your staff 50-50, 2/3?
On this particular
Some
item.
had exact numbers, some had different figures, but I mean, you know, we definitely did, and we can always look at ways of improving that so that people feel more included. Or
yeah, I love that about us. I do love that about Litchfield.
We have even shared it previously with Superintendent's Advisory Council, and the hard part is everybody has a different opinion.
Right.
So you have just as many advocating for one way as the other. So I think that's the other.
I think the only other thing
just have to add another day somewhere, Elaine, for the 180. Otherwise, you have to apply for an exception to not meeting the 180 days, and we wouldn't. You don't want to do that every year. You only want to do that when you have to.
I think the only other thing that I would like to address about this, and this has to do with the email, if there is a topic that is worthy of teacher input, then the board needs to hear about it. If we have one teacher who's saying all of these teachers want to see a different calendar, but we're only hearing from one teacher, that makes it very difficult for me as a board member to kind of like pitch a deal, right? So the more information that we have from people, the better we are to support you. At least I feel like that. If I feel like I'm here because I want to support the teachers, and I need to hear from the teachers. If I want to support the parents, I need to hear from the parents, the kids, whatever it may be. So understanding the 10:50 now release time helps me obviously with the decision, but without knowing what people are thinking, it's hard to help people.
I would like to add something to that, which is to say that as a board, we are very open to feedback, and we do appreciate every email that we receive, whether that is from a community member, a parent, or a staff member. However, that does not mean that we can accommodate every request.
Very true.
And so not accommodating a request does not mean that we are not listening to feedback. And so we have now discussed this email at great length. Mrs. DeCoste and Superintendent Gunning have stated the reasons why it's not feasible for that to happen. And I just want to make sure that it is not mistaken that the inability to accommodate a request means ignoring the suggestion.
I agree, Kim.
Okay, are we ready to move forward? Any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, so we are on item 14B. I will entertain a motion for the approval of 2021-2022 school year calendar.
I move to approve the 2021-2022 school year calendar as presented.
Okay,
I will second.
all right, thank you. All right, I will go in order. Remember, we just need to quickly go through this individually. Kim, what is your vote?
Kimberly Moran, I vote yay.
Melissa?
Melissa's item, I vote yay.
Elaine?
Elaine Weathersby, yay.
Tanya?
Tanya Fitzer, yay.
Danielle Clymer, I'm also yay, so motion carries. Moving on to item 14C, hire student teachers as contracted guest teachers. Superintendent Gunning will be leading us through that presentation.
Madam President, members of the governing board, this is one of the ideas that we had to support the desperate need of substitutes. So what we would like to be able to do is to post for guest teachers and have our student teachers who have completed all of their student teaching and they are certificated teachers apply for those positions that we could hire them and have them in a pool of our own pool of candidates that we would place first in any vacancy or open position within the district. We are not sure exactly how many of the interest and exactly how many people would meet the qualifications. We would go through a typical interview process, anticipating or hoping that we could get maybe 4 to 5. These people would also be the primary person that would take on any long-term leave assignment as well. So the other piece of that is kind of tapping into that recruitment and retention, is that then we're not losing these candidates that we know we will need for the following year because they're already still on our staff.
Great, thank you. I think, we heard this at the top of the meeting in terms of as part of our COVID response and our operational issues moving forward in terms of not having a good number of substitutes to be there for our staff when they are out. One, I just want to say thank you, right? I mean, we sort of asked you last time as you were going through some other items that we'll get to next, we asked you to think out of the box, for lack of a better word, right? Like find a way to make this work because, having teachers cover classes and principals in classes and all of that, I mean, it has to happen on an emergency basis, but on a regular basis, that's going to wear our staff out so much. And, we were really, you guys made us aware of that. So thank you for trying to come up with other ways. I think, for me, it kind of boils down to 2 things. Number one, for people that finish their student teaching in December, you have that sort of extra semester that sometimes you can get hired, sometimes you can't. There's not really a lot of open positions at that time. So us securing people that we've trained in our student teaching program and then secure them for that second semester before there may be a long-term open position in the fall is good. We know we have a shortage of teachers and we certainly would like to retain them here versus training them and then send them off to another district. So I think that's a huge plus. Also, I am hoping that the next time we see these fill rates right in the next 2 months or so, we start to see back into our normal ranges. 68% is hard, right? It's hard on everybody, students, teachers, everything. So I'm in support of it for that and hoping that we can find some relief for those people that are doing double duty right now. Anyone else, comments or concerns?
One question, Superintendent Gunning or Ms. Sanders, I'm not sure who would like to address this. How does this work with our relationship with ESI? Because are these contracted guest teachers employees of the Litchfield district, or are they ESI employees that we are utilizing through their services?
No, they would be our employees. So they're ours, so they get placed, it would be placed first and be our primary source.
Okay, so they would be in, let's say, a tier of subs. They would be tier 1, and then we would make sure we're utilizing them. And then if we need additional subs, we would use our regular resources through ESI.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think it's great. I appreciate you thinking outside of the box, and you know, everyone's in desperate need, and it, as was said earlier, it kind of serves two purposes: retaining, and also you kind of get to see those teachers spread their wings on their own a bit for future employment. It's good information. So nice work.
Great. Well, if there's no other comments or questions for that, then I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the hiring of student teachers as contracted guest teachers for the remainder of the school year.
I second.
Thank you. I'll go individually through our votes. Kim, how do you vote?
Kimberly Moran, yay.
Melissa?
Melissa's item, a yay.
Tanya?
Tanya Fitzer, yay.
Elaine?
Elaine Weathersby, yay.
Danielle Clymer, I'm also yay, so motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 14D, approval of certified guest teachers substitute pay rate.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Gunning, President Clymer, just to add to what you just mentioned and what we can do to help increase our fill rates. Tonight, we'd like to propose increasing our daily sub rate and long-term sub rate by $20, starting on Thursday through January 31st of 2021. So it's just something, although we're in DLA format right now, something we were recommending to have in place at least starting now through January 31st. Now that we all know that we have had some low utilization with our substitute costs last year compared to this year, what we have seen is a $65,000 savings in that, because we're obviously not spending as much with our daily subs. And increasing our rates by $20 will keep us somewhat competitive with some other partner districts of ESI. In terms of surrounding districts, it will put us higher compared to some, which include Avondale Elementary, Tolleson Elementary, and Owl Freya. And so again, we are just recommending to increase the rates by $20 with a sunset date of January 31st. So changing the daily rate from $100 per day to $120 per day. And then for long-term subs, it would go from $125 per day to $145 per day.
Okay. Thank you, Monica, very much. I think financially, I'm glad to see that we are seeing a savings someplace. We very rarely see a savings, so I'm pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, the reason that we're seeing a savings is because we have not had the coverage and the substitutes that we've been able to find. So a couple of questions on this. I'm absolutely in favor of a pay raise. I think, thank you for doing the research and showing us what other districts are doing. I think us being competitive is imperative right now. We can't ask people to come out and do a job that they can do somewhere else, the same job, and get paid more. So I think us being competitive is important. Going back, kind of using this one as well as, this is obviously going to help us retain the substitutes we have now, right? The dedicated 15 or 20 people that have been with us throughout COVID and have been substituting and have been trained. I know we've heard about some different trainings and things that have gone on. So, kind of as a thank you to them, and hopefully going to be able to recruiting some other ones. But kind of going back when we were talking about the student teachers above and then these teachers, these substitute teachers here. So we've talked about this a little bit in the last meeting, and I think we're going to talk about it a little bit more in terms of like stipending teachers and things like that as well. But how does this work now if we're paying our substitutes a little bit more? So hopefully we're going to be retaining our substitutes, and then we now have these potentially 4 people that we're going to hire full-time as sort of floating substitutes. Will teachers and staff, I know that sometimes they say, oh, well, this teacher really likes, or this substitute, really likes going into elementary, or this one only likes middle school. will the teachers still have a say in who their sub is, or no, that changes the system now that we have kind of different rules to that?
I don't think it necessarily changes it. Are you referring to Superintendent Gunning's item about the contracted subs that we plan to hire, the approximate 4?
Correct. Yes. I was just saying between this, it looks like we're trying to, retain and recruit some additional people. So I'm just saying, does this limit the power of our teachers and some of our staff? I know that there's some people that, they like certain subs in their classrooms and things like that. Does that change any of that?
No, I don't see why it would. So I would say no.
Okay. Perfect. Any other comments or questions on this pay increase? Good. All right. Moving right along. So I will entertain a motion then on item 14D.
I move to approve the certified guest teacher substitute pay rate as presented.
A second.
All right. Great. We will do our individual voting. Kim, I'll go to you first.
Kimberly Moran, yay.
Melissa?
Melissa's item a yay.
Tanya?
Tanya Fitzer, yay.
And Elaine?
Elaine Weathersby, yay.
Danielle Clymer, I am also yay. Motion carries. And thank you to our guest teachers out there that have been with us through COVID and have done this. I hope that this pay raise comes as a little bit of a thank you to us and stick with us through the rest of this. Okay, moving on to 14E, approval of stipend for certified teacher covering the class when no guest teacher is available. Wendy is going to be presenting this for us. Wendy Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning. Last month, Kristen Casillas and I did present a recommendation from our Supporting Teachers Committee that we look into paying our teachers to cover a class during their prep period. One modification I made to this since the last meeting was that when we first introduced it, it was meant to be when we were back to 5-day in-person. I've modified this so that it would be if students are present in the classroom, so that could even be during the hybrid mode. So that kind of expanded that. And we did clarify in here that the schools would first utilize other administrators on their campus or other administrators that are available before they would ask a teacher to give up their prep period. So it is the last resort. And the teacher that is covering would be required to provide instruction based on the sub plan.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Does anyone have any questions for Wendy or concerns about the program? No? Okay. I will say, I think it's not a concern. It's just a, I like the fact that we're doing this for, a specific period of time, hopefully to get us through the pandemic. Now we may come back in January and say that we have to, continue this throughout. But I do agree with Wendy that this should be a last resort. I know we've heard time and time again from our administrators here that that planning period is priceless. As we jump between in-person and hybrid and online, and I think that planning period becomes even more important. So I'm hoping that we will not have to utilize this very often and support our teachers in that way. But if we do, I'm okay with them being compensated for it. So if there's no comments, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the stipend for a certified teacher covering classes when no guest teacher is available during the pandemic as presented.
I second.
Thank you. We'll start our individual voting. Kim, you'll go first.
Kimberly Moran, yay.
Melissa?
Melissa's item a yay.
Tanya?
Tanya Fitzer, yay.
Elaine?
Elaine Weathersby, yay.
Danielle Clymer, I'm also yay. Motion carries. Okay, item 14F, the 2020-2021 revised classified hourly placement chart and salary increase due to minimum wage rates for affected classified hourly staff. That is a mouthful. Monica Sanders is going to present to us again.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Gunning. This evening, this item does contain 3 parts. So I'll start by saying on November 8, 2006, Arizona voters approved Prop 206, also called the Healthy Working Families Act, to raise the state's minimum wage each year beginning January 2017. So effective January 1st, the minimum wage will increase to $12.15. So the first part of this agenda item is to update the placement charts for 13 positions to reflect the minimum wage of $12.15 per hour. The second part of this agenda is to increase 2 positions from $12.10 to $12.18 per hour. And the purpose of this is to maintain the differential between these two positions and the 13 others that are actually at $12.15. And the third part of this action item is to update current employees who are receiving less than $12.15 per hour to be updated to $12.15 effective January 1st. And then the 2 positions mentioned in the previous item, which are your food service custodians and your facilities technicians, to be updated to $12.18 per hour if they're currently under $12.18 per hour starting January 1st. The cost of the updates will be $18,267.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the floor for discussion. I will start off by saying, Monica, thank you very much. I know this has been a several year process that we've gone through as the minimum wage has been updated. And one thing that you, along with the rest of the district staff, have said to us many times is the importance in creating that stair step of not just increasing everybody to that new minimum wage, but creating that differential that kind of maintains fairness and the seniority that they've earned in our district. And so I'm really proud to say that we've been able to keep that and to increase everybody's wages up to that point. So thank you for continuing to make that a priority for the staff. I know that that's very important. It might look like pennies here, but over a year salary and a lifetime here with the district, it adds up to a lot. So I appreciate that. Anyone else have any comments or suggestions here? All right, it is the last item on the agenda, so it seems like we've all quieted down, and hopefully it just means we are all thumbs up and ready to go on this one. So I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the revised classified hourly placement chart and salary increase as presented.
I second.
Thank you, Melissa. We will go individually again. Kim, we'll start with you.
Kimberly Moran, yay.
Melissa?
Melissa's item, a yay.
Tanya?
Tanya Fitzer, yay.
Elaine?
Elaine Weathersby, yay.
Danielle Clymer, I am also yay. So motion carries. All right. We are through our action items and to our favorite item of the night, 15A, which is adjournment.
Oh, I motion to adjourn the meeting.
I will second that, Melissa. Thank you very much. I don't think we need to do this individually. Everyone turn off your mute button. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Keep your hand down if you do. We are officially adjourned. Ladies, thank you very much. Good evening to everyone.